Welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy my stories. Final Singularity by James Byron Love. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. Now let's get into this thrilling sci-fi story. Walking across the network of receivers, the hum of the array vibrated underfoot, low and constant. The sound was not quite mechanical, not quite alive, but something in between, like a heartbeat stretched across kilometers. Status report, I said, raising my voice just enough to cut through the quiet resonance. Phase alignment on quadrant 12 was complete. Chalak, the android, replied. Its voice smooth, neutral, lacking any inflection a human would use. Residual interferences within acceptable parameters. Calibration proceeds. Residual interference within acceptable parameters? I muttered under my breath. Moving closer. Explain acceptable. Quantify it. Residual interference is measured at 0.0007 degrees phase deviation, the android said without hesitation. Deviation is negligible. No corrective action required. Negligible for you, maybe, I said, shaking my head. Humans might notice it in the reconstructed image. Don't you have error margins built for me? A brief pause, as if the android considered the sarcasm. Error margins account for human oversight. Adjustments are logged for review. Human oversight. Lips pressed tight. Oversight was the only real job here. Watching a machine execute tasks with greater precision than any human could hope for. Noting errors that didn't even exist. Every step, every calculation, every movement of these receivers highlighted a useless truth. Presence required, contribution optional. The air, or what passed for air in the thin, filtered environment above the array, smelled faintly metallic, tinged with the warmth of electronics and the ozone of active circuits. A breeze carried the sound of moving machinery across the vast expanse of sensors, creating a low, shifting chorus that never stopped. It was hypnotic and exhausting at the same time. I crouched next to a cluster of triangular sensors, eyes tracing the lattice of emitters. Quadrant 12 reports a 0.0007 degree deviation. Are you telling me this system runs better than I ever could? Affirmative, the android said. Calculation speed exceeds human capability by a factor of 8 million. Accuracy is correspondingly higher. 8 million. A human factor 8 million times smaller. The words settled like a stone in my chest. Comparison was unavoidable. Resentment bubbled under the surface, the perfect precision of the machines only highlighting the gap between flesh and metal. And I'm here because a human is required on paper, correct? Affirmative. Protocol mandates a human overseer. Your presence satisfies regulatory conditions. Satisfied. That word tasted bitter. Running a hand through my hair. Stepping away from the node. I let my eyes wander across the endless expanse. Hundreds of thousands of receivers stretched toward the horizon. A lattice of light and metal. Humming, calculating, correcting. No human presence required, yet protocol demanded me, insisted upon my relevance. Another android moved alongside me, adjusting phase shifts on a receiver cluster 3 meters above the ground. Quadrant 17 requires authorization for minor timing adjustment, it said. Minor? I asked, squinting at the readouts. This will take microseconds? Correct. Why involve me at all? Microsecond adjustments require human authorization to satisfy compliance. Implementation will proceed upon confirmation. Confirmation typed into the tablet. Thumb hovering. Every log entry, every approval, symbolic and meaningless to the array but essential for the bureaucracy that brought me here. Approval granted. The system continued seamlessly. The machines perfectly synchronized. Perfectly precise. Human presence validated nothing except paperwork. You're watching humans watch machines, I muttered aloud, half to myself, half to the android beside me. Do you ever wonder why humans exist at all in operations like this? Existence parameters for human oversight are defined. Purpose is ceremonial. Redundancy is anticipated. Redundancy. The word lingered in the air. It carried the weight of decades of failure. Every misstep, every missed opportunity, the trail of a career that had landed me here because nobody else with sense would take the assignment. Human oversight, entirely redundant. Tell me, I said, voice sharper now, have you ever thought about what it feels like to be unnecessary? To watch perfection unfold and know it would happen the same without you? No hesitation. Understanding of human perception is recognized. Emotional response to redundancy is anticipated. Observation is sufficient to satisfy protocol. Observation. Presence here was nothing more than observation. Watching the array align itself, Watch light refracted electronically through the receivers. Watch photons from distant stars bend across billions of light years to be reconstructed in real time, all while realizing my body and mind contributed nothing tangible. Quadrant 21 reports a minor timing fluctuation. Another android's voice cut through, breaking the reverie. Correction calculated. Authorization required. Authorization, I repeated, a laugh barely audible. You're telling me I hold authority over nothing. Authorization is a joke. Approval is a ritual. Affirmative. Protocol satisfied, the android replied. Its metallic hands applied the correction automatically once the tablet confirmed human authorization. No delay, no error, no thought. The wind, or something like it, stirred faintly across the expanse. Sensors glimmered faintly, refracting faint starlight through electronically steered phases. The scale of it all was overwhelming, magnificent, and humiliating at once. Every time a receiver clicked into perfect alignment, the reminder echoed in my chest. Human presence here was ornamental. My boots clicked against the metallic walkways. I stopped at a junction, surveying modules stretching in perfect symmetry toward a horizon that felt infinite. Even the air vibrated faintly with the energy of computation, pulses of unseen light coursing through the lattice, bending and recombining across distances impossible to measure without tools. The alien perfection of the array made me seem absurdly small. Chalak, said one android, following me along the scaffolding. Your attention is required at quadrant 25. Phase drift detected during cross-calibration. Phase drift? I asked, striding forward. Explain. During cross-alignment of neighboring modules, micro-deviation registered at 0.0009 degrees. Correction is recommended. Pending approval. Correction pending my approval, I muttered, tapping the tablet. Approval granted. Does the array care that a human just touched this? No. Approval process satisfies regulatory condition only. Operational parameters unaffected. Touching the tablet, pressing confirm, witnessing the correction applied seamlessly. Yet another reminder. The array did not need me. Authority was paper-thin, presence ceremonial, purpose defined by others, symbolic. The perfection surrounding me highlighted every flaw, hesitation, and failure that had followed me into this endless northern expanse. Every few meters, the shimmer of phase alignment corrections cascaded across distant quadrants, tiny lights pulsing in a wave-like rhythm. Adjustments measured in femtoseconds, communication between machines faster than thought. Steps slowed, allowing eyes to drink in the scope, billions of receivers stretching in geometric precision, each adjusting independently yet as part of a single cohesive instrument. Confidence in speed unattainable by human hands or eyes. Chalak, said another android, almost casually. Network efficiency exceeds projected parameters. Calibration complete across primary northern array. A long exhale. Congratulations, I said, voice flat. Do you ever stop to marvel at your own perfection? Marveling is unnecessary. Efficiency is optimal. Tasks completed within projected timelines. The shadows stretched long across the metallic expanse, dark against the steady glow of active receivers. The hum of computation continued, light refracted electronically, phase shifts calculated, errors corrected before they could exist. Human presence, ceremonial, authority, symbolic, observation, the only tangible contribution. And yet, stepping through the endless lattice of light and computation, the pull of alien perfection was magnetic, the sting of being entirely unnecessary sharp. Pausing briefly, I leaned on the railing, watching receivers adjust, electrons racing, calculations unfolding like an invisible symphony. Do you even understand what it's like? I asked one android, voice low, almost conversational, to watch something this perfect and realize your brain can't touch it. Comprehension of operational function is within capacity. Emotional response to limitation is not required. A tight smile. That was precisely the problem. Machines did not know envy, frustration, embarrassment, or pride. And yet here I was, a human among flawless metal, carrying the weight of all those feelings alone. The array's hum was omnipresent, vibrating through the soles of my boots, seeping into my bones, echoing against the endless lattice of receivers that stretched toward the horizon. It wasn't a hum of nature or even of engines. It was the subtle song of billions of calculations, billions of phase shifts, photons steered with precision beyond human comprehension. And amid it all, my thoughts clung to a single, insistent idea. Chalak. The name that had been mine for a lifetime, miscast, misheard, mispronounced, and often mocked. A name born from dyslexic hands fumbling over the letters of Charles. A name that should have been ordinary but never was. Chalak, I said aloud, letting the word roll over the metal underfoot. Does it suit me? Or is it just the imprint of someone else's mistakes? The android nearest me adjusted a panel of receivers without breaking its rhythm. Pronunciation correct. Overseer. Name aligns with registry, it replied. Voice smooth, precise, lacking the inflection that might have suggested empathy. Even so, the sound of it, mechanically perfect, felt like a knife pressing into an old scar. The world had never spoken it so cleanly. Not teachers, not clerks, not the neighbors who had laughed behind their hands. A memory surfaced. The classroom, too bright, too small, the smell of chalk and waxed floors. The teacher squinted at the roster, her pencil hovering. Chalak, cheat. Her voice trailed, uncertain. Whispers rose like tiny spikes in the air around me. Chalak, that's not how you say it, a boy called, smirking from the back row. Quiet, the teacher snapped, voice tight, almost apologetic. We'll use the official spelling. She paused, scratched out letters, wrote something that looked close enough but wasn't. The laughter of the class trailed me, sticking to my back like a second skin, a shadow I could never shake. Back in the present, I ran a hand across the cool metal of a receiver. The vibration thrummed in my fingertips. Do you understand it? I asked the nearest android. Do you know what it's like to have a name that feels wrong in every world you enter? Even here, it follows me. Understanding of human perception acknowledged, it said. Emotional significance of name recognized. Practical function unaffected. Practical function. Always practical. Never human. Another memory. Home. My mother at the kitchen table. Pencil poised, hands trembling slightly as she signed the birth certificate. Chalak, she said softly. It's unique. Very few people have a name like it. You'll see, darling, people will learn to say it right eventually. I had nodded, trying to believe her, but already sensing the misalignment between intention and outcome. Unique doesn't make it right, my younger self argued, small voice tight with resentment. It doesn't stop people from laughing at me. It doesn't make me acceptable. Acceptable? She asked, frowning. Chalak, you'll learn to carry it well. Everyone has something they carry. Years later, the bureaucracies made it worse. A government office, forms sprawled across a desk. Name? The clerk asked, pen hovering. Chalak, I said, emphasizing the syllables, trying to make the letters land like stepping stones. The clerk squinted. Chalak, Chalak, I repeated, louder this time. Just Chalak, she sighed, scratched at the paper, wrote something that looked almost right. My chest constricted. Another bureaucratic acknowledgement that my existence required correction, adjustment, approval. My name, like me, reduced to a series of administrative procedures, none of which touched the essence of who I was. Overseer, the android's voice broke through the memory, smooth and deliberate. Authorization required, Chalak. Phase drift detected. I tapped the tablet, logging the correction, but my mind lingered in memory. The machines hummed around me, billions of them coordinating with flawless precision, and none of them could recognize the sting of a lifetime spent correcting a single label, a single identity. Do you ever think about it? I asked aloud, letting the words drift across the empty space between us. Do you know what it feels like to exist as an error? To have a name that people can't say, can't write, can't even accept. Comprehension of human emotion limited, it replied. Operational function unaffected. Limited. Yes, that was the word. The human world, the schools, the clerks, even my family. None of them understood. And yet here I was, observing light from distant stars, refracted, recalculated, reconstructed, my name carrying the stubborn persistence it always had. Chalak. Wrong. Unique. Persistent. Unmistakably human. Another memory, a meeting with a senior administrator years ago, explaining why I had been the only candidate willing to accept this assignment. Your record is unconventional, he said, tapping a long list of past mistakes, but you have perseverance, an unusual kind of persistence. I had gritted my teeth. Chalak has persistence, yes, and stubbornness, and a name people never say right. That counts for something? He raised his eyebrows, Nodded slowly. Yes, that counts. Even now, standing on the scaffold, watching the array bend light electronically, phase shifts measured in femtoseconds, the perfection surrounding me reflected my imperfections, my human flaws, the stubborn imprint of my name. Overseer, Quadrant 32 requires approval, the android said, precise, calm, as if reading my thoughts aloud. Approval granted, I said, tapping the tablet. Does it care that Chalak exists? The words floated across the hum of billions of calculations, almost lost in the magnitude of the work. No, presence verified, operational parameters unchanged, it replied. Presence verified, like my name, my existence mattered in record only. Log, acknowledged, functionally irrelevant. And yet, despite every mispronunciation, every bureaucratic correction, every humiliation, every administrative hesitation, every child's cruel laughter, every misaligned letter and misspelled form, my name carried the weight of decades of survival. Every mistake, every failure, every stubborn insistence that it be mine had led me here, to the edge of the universe. Amid billions of electronically steered receivers, bending light from stars that died billions of years ago, and still Chalak remained. A faint smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. The letters on a birth certificate, the whispers in classrooms, the sighs at offices, they all converged into something stubbornly alive. In this vast, humming perfection, Chalak, wrong, unique, unmistakably human, endured. Even if no one else acknowledged it, even if the machines, the laws, the bureaucracies did not care, I did. I carried it with me, and somehow, that had to be enough. The northern horizon stretched like a silvered lattice, endless and humming beneath my boots. The optical phased array pulsed softly, billions of receivers calculating and adjusting, bending light across unimaginable distances. I traced a finger over the tablet in my hand, thumb hovering over the approve button yet again. Approval after approval, authorization after authorization. Every tap was ritual, hollow, a symbol of participation where none was required. And yet, here I was, Chalak, the token human. The thought curled like smoke around my chest. Why me? Why here? Chalak, an android said nearby, its tone flat yet precise. Quadrant 53 requests confirmation for minor phase adjustment. Deviation measured at 0.0008 degrees. Minor? I muttered, squinting at the holographic readouts. You're telling me my approval is required for micro-deviation? Microseconds. Affirmative. Chalak. Human oversight mandated by regulatory compliance, it replied. I pressed my lips together, frustration sharpening like a knife. Human oversight. A single phrase that defined me entirely. Necessary only in name, irrelevant in action. My presence validated nothing. These machines, these billions of electronically steered receivers, would perform their calculations without hesitation, without error, without a need for Chalak. The reminder was bitter, and I let it sit. Have you ever thought about what it feels like, I asked aloud, glancing toward the android, to be ornamental? To exist only on paper, while the real work happens with or without you? Emotional significance acknowledged, Chalak, it said. Operational success unaffected by human presence. Operational success unaffected, I echoed, voice tighter than intended. That was the truth, stripped bare. Every failure, every misstep that had brought me here, the mispronounced name, the botched evaluations, the endless minor embarrassments across decades, converged into this singular certainty. The array didn't care. The universe didn't care. Only the regulations did. I walked toward a cluster of triangular receivers, each one gleaming with reflected starlight. The android beside me adjusted a phase shift while its sensors hovered over readings faster than my brain could process. Chalak, Quadrant 57 indicates residual interference at 0.0006 degrees. Authorization for correction required. Correction? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Does it even matter? Correction will proceed upon confirmation. Chalak. Compliance with oversight mandatory. I sighed and tapped the tablet. Approval granted. Another wave of light rippled across the array as the correction applied instantly, seamlessly. I stepped back and shook my head. Human authority here was ceremonial. Symbolic. A placeholder for emotionless bureaucracy. Every gesture I made, every log I signed, existed to satisfy a law written thousands of light years away by people who would never see this machine. This planet. This work. My thoughts wandered, spiraling. Years of failures, each one trivial in isolation but cumulative in consequence, had funneled me here. Assignment after assignment rejected by others. Positions no one wanted. A career built on scarcity rather than skill. And now, standing at the literal edge of known space, I realized it had all amounted to one thing. Survival. Stubborn persistence. The only reason I was here was because no one else would take this assignment. A hum deeper than the receivers themselves reverberated through the scaffold. The android beside me tilted its head, sensors reflecting faint light. Chalak. Biometric indicators suggest elevated frustration. Logging optional. Optional, I muttered. Everything about me seems optional here. Recognition of human sentiment acknowledged. Chalak. Operational function unaffected. The truth of that statement was suffocating. Frustration twisted into something darker, sharper. A human oversight required on the microsecond adjustments of light from billions of light years away. A tiny authority, meaningless, recorded only because law demanded it. And yet, the privilege of witnessing this perfection was not nothing. A faint spark of defiance flickered. Perhaps irrelevance in action did not preclude significance in observation. I stepped along the metallic walkways, boots clanging softly against the scaffold. I said, voice low, I came here with nothing. No other prospects, just my record of failures and this strange persistence. And now, I'm witness to something most humans will never see. Isn't that something? Affirmative. Chalak, the android replied. Exposure to unique operational parameters is within predicted human benefit models. I let out a short laugh, humorless. Exposure to human benefit models. It sounded like a line from a bureaucrat who had never seen a planet stretched thin across a slow-rotating sky, with receivers bending light from distant galaxies and computing in femtoseconds. And yet, in this exposure, I felt both awe and rage. Awe for the scale, the elegance, the impossibility of it all. Rage at my own irrelevance, at the bureaucracy that insisted a human must be here yet rendered me powerless. Another memory surfaced, a meeting with a senior administrator, years ago, discussing why I was the only candidate willing to accept this assignment. Your record is unconventional, he said, tapping a long list of missteps. But you have perseverance, an unusual kind of persistence. I have stubbornness, too, I replied, bristling. And a name people never say right. Does that count for anything? He had regarded me carefully, the weight of decades in his eyes. Yes, that counts. I looked down at my hands. They had done nothing to earn this role, yet everything to bring me here. Persistence, stubbornness, survival against probability. The only credentials that mattered in a universe that did not care about my presence. Chalak, the android beside me said. Voice smooth, breaking the spiral of memory. Quadrant 62 request minor correction authorization. Residual phase deviation at 0.0005 degrees. Authorization granted. I said automatically, tapping the tablet. You notice that? Everything waits on me, and yet nothing depends on me. Observation sufficient for compliance, Chalak, it replied. Sufficient. A word I could taste, bitter and metallic. Presence sufficient. Function irrelevant. Life reduced to taps on a screen while photons bent electronically across the universe. Yet, even as the bitterness coiled tight, a part of me could not ignore the pull of proximity, the access to knowledge and scale, the privilege to stand here at the edge of comprehension. A breeze stirred across the scaffold, the kind of imperceptible wind that carried no sound but a faint vibration across the sensors. I leaned against the railing and watched a cascade of phase adjustments ripple across a distant quadrant. Light bent, phased, reconstructed across billions of individual nodes, each operating beyond the capacity of a single human mind. And still, Chalak existed here, ceremonial but watching. You ever get tired of watching, Chalak? I asked aloud, addressing the nearest android. Of being the observer when you could be anything else. Human curiosity is recognized, Chalak, it said. Operational parameters continue. Observation alone is sufficient. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. Curiosity alone. Observation alone. The universe displayed perfection, immense and indifferent, and my role was to approve its motions. My failures had brought me here. My persistence kept me here. My stubbornness made me endure. Every mundane authorization, every log, Every tap of a tablet was a testament to being human in a world that no longer required it. Another memory flickered, the first time I realized my name had followed me into bureaucracy, across continents, star systems, and assignments. The mispronunciations, the fumbled paperwork, the stifled laughter of colleagues, everything funneled into one persistent truth. Chalak. Wrong. Persistent. Uniquely human. I squared my shoulders, stepping past a cluster of receivers adjusting in unison. Chalak. I repeated aloud, voice carrying across the scaffold. Might be useless here. Might be redundant. But I've gotten this far by being nothing else but Chalak. And somehow, that's enough. Acknowledged. Chalak. The android replied. Compliance parameters met. Compliance, I muttered. The word tasted hollow. Yet it grounded me. My authority existed. My presence existed. My persistence existed. Perhaps not functionally necessary. Perhaps not operationally vital. But undeniably present. Undeniably human. I paused, staring at the horizon where the receivers melded into the starlit curvature of the planet. This mission, meaningless to most, monumental to none, offered a glimpse few would ever have. The frustration of redundancy and the privilege of observation warred in my chest, a constant oscillation I could not silence. And in that oscillation, in the mixture of bitterness and awe, I found a fragile thread, the opportunity to matter, even if only as witness, even if only as Chalak. A final correction chime rang out across the scaffold. I tapped, approve, watching the light ripple. The array continued, flawless, and I continued, stubborn and alive, utterly human amid perfection. My failures had led here. My persistence had sustained me. My name carried me, and Chalak, redundant or not, mattered in a way no calculation could quantify. The planet rotates slowly, a motion that stretches every day into something endless, like a silvered clock with no hands. I wake in the cramped module at the edge of the array, the faint hum of electronics already seeping through the walls. Even before my boots hit the graded walkway, I can feel it, the vibration of billions of receivers calculating and adjusting in perfect harmony, light refracted, phase shifts measured in femtoseconds. Every morning feels the same, yet I watch it with a sense of perpetual novelty and perpetual futility. I am the token human, required on paper, irrelevant in action. Chalak. An android intones as I step onto the scaffold, its voice precise, neutral. Quadrant 12 requires authorization for phase realignment. Residual interference at 0.0006 degrees. I raise my eyebrows, squinting at the holographic readouts. Phase realignment? Microdeviation? I ask, voice sharper than I intend. Does it really need me? Human oversight mandated. Chalak. Implementation will proceed upon confirmation. It says, unblinking, mechanical, and precise. I tap the tablet, thumb hovering over the approval key. Another wave of light ripples across the array. I step back, watching the cascade of tiny adjustments unfold in perfect choreography. The reminder is bitter. These machines would do it without me. Every flicker of light, every realignment, every correction occurs with or without my thumb pressing a button. Presence ceremonial, authority symbolic, observation compulsory. I move along the metallic walkways, boots clicking against the scaffolding, watching the androids adjust receivers. Their movements are precise, fluid, deliberate. Hands hover over control panels, sensors shift, light beams bend, calculations ripple. I log every action, approve every minor adjustment, but I do nothing of consequence. My fingers feel like they are tracing air, approving movements that require no human hand. Chalak. Another android calls from a cluster of triangular emitters. Quadrant 17 reports timing deviation of 0.0009 degrees. Authorization required. Authorization granted. I mutter, tapping the screen. Does it even matter? No. Operational parameters unaffected. Compliance satisfied, it replies. The words sit in my chest, heavy and metallic. Compliance satisfied. My presence here satisfies a law written somewhere, by someone who would never see this work. This planet. This machine. I continue down the walkway, eyes tracing the lattice of receivers stretching toward the horizon, each one adjusting, calculating, bending light from stars long. Dead. My role is hollow, and I feel it in every fiber. I crouch beside a receiver cluster, brushing a hand over the smooth metal. You notice anything wrong? I ask aloud, half expecting the android to reply. Residual deviation negligible. Chalak. Human oversight confirmed. It responds without hesitation. Negligible. My fingers hover over the tablet again, ready to authorize. Another wave of correction flows through the network like a river of light. My thumb taps. Approval granted. Observation sufficient. Presence verified. Functionally irrelevant. I step back, letting my gaze drift over the seemingly endless lattice, the perfection of it almost unbearable. I think about the years that led me here, the failures, the missteps, the mispronunciations of my name that had trailed me like a shadow. Chalak. Wrong. Persistent. Uniquely human. And now, at the literal edge of the universe, I am nothing more than a ceremonial observer. My human limitations are magnified in contrast to the perfection of these machines, and yet I carry the badge of oversight as if it means something. Chalak. An android says from the northern quadrant. Network efficiency exceeds projected parameters. Calibration complete across primary nodes. Marveling unnecessary? I mutter under my breath. I am marveling anyway. Marveling is unnecessary. Human emotional response anticipated but operationally irrelevant. It replies. I step along the scaffold, letting the vibration of the array hum through my bones. Each adjustment, each calibration, each phase shift is precise beyond comprehension. Every time I approve a minor correction, I am reminded that my authority is paper-thin, my presence ornamental. And yet, I remain. I approve, I log, I exist. The day stretches onward. The slow rotation of the planet renders time meaningless. Morning becomes midday, becomes evening, becomes nothing at all but a continuous flow of light and calculation. I perform my duties with mechanical precision. Approval, logging, monitoring, documenting. I speak to the androids when prompted, listening to their precise, measured responses. Chalak. One says, Quadrant 23 requests minor correction for phase drift. Residual deviation at 0.0005 degrees. Human authorization required. I tap the tablet, frustration tightening in my chest. Authorization granted. Why do you need me at all? Human presence mandated. Compliance satisfied. It says, its voice unchanging. I grit my teeth. Compliance satisfied. My hands perform motions that are meaningless except to satisfy the bureaucracy that insists I exist. I walk past rows of receivers, each adjusting minutely, independently, yet perfectly. Their perfection is hypnotic, and I feel my own imperfection keenly. I pause near a cluster of angular emitters. Light bends through the array, forming a faint shimmer across the scaffolding. You ever get tired of doing the same thing, Chalak? I ask myself aloud. A bitter joke. The nearest android tilts its head, sensors reflecting the faint light. Repetition recognized. Human emotional significance acknowledged. Chalak. It replies. Emotional significance. I mutter. Yes, that's all I've got. The day continues in a rhythm both maddening and mesmerizing. Phase corrections, logging, approvals. Residual deviations measured in fractions of a degree. Timing fluctuations calculated in femtoseconds. I tap my tablet, authorize, watch light ripple, record, repeat. Hours stretch like lead. The perfection around me is constant, indifferent, and yet magnetic. I cannot look away. I cannot act beyond observation. I am tethered to the ritual of oversight. Memories of failure float through my mind. Memories of mispronunciations, bureaucratic errors, missed opportunities. I think about the administrators who once doubted me, about the assignments no one else wanted. Here, in this endless lattice of light and computation, the persistence that got me here is all I have. I am Chalak, observer, human, token, necessary only on paper, irrelevant in action. Chalak. Another android calls, voice calm, precise, biometric readings indicate elevated stress. Logging optional, optional. I mutter, exhaling sharply. Everything about me is optional here. Operational parameters unaffected, it replies. I walk along the scaffold, boots clicking softly, the vibration of the array vibrating through me. I watch as billions of receivers calculate, adjust, and correct, faster than thought, more precise than any human could be. I log, I approve, I observe. I exist as proof of redundancy, ceremonial oversight, human persistence. Chalak. A voice interrupts. Quadrant 42 requires confirmation for minor phase realignment. Residual deviation at 0.0004 degrees. I press the tablet again. Confirmation granted. Everything waits on me, and yet nothing depends on me. Observation sufficient. Chalak. Compliance parameters met. It replies. Sufficient. I taste the word in my mouth. Presence sufficient. Function irrelevant. The perfection of the array continues, indifferent to my existence. Yet I watch, approving, logging, persistent. The slow rotation of the planet continues, day into night, night into day. My body grows tired, my mind stretches with the endless repetition, but I remain. I walk the scaffolds, approve the adjustments, log the results. I speak when necessary, observe always, carry my presence like a stubborn flame against the mechanical perfection around me. Chalak. The android beside me intones. Network performance continues within optimal parameters. No deviations exceeding thresholds detected. Optimal. Yes, I see. I mutter, stepping back and letting the shimmer of light wash over me. Does any of it care that I exist? No. Presence verified. Chalak. Operational parameters unchanged. It replies. Verified. Log. Approved. Human presence ceremonial, symbolic, redundant. And yet, I persist. I persist because my name persists. I persist because my failures brought me here. And my stubbornness sustains me. Chalak exists, observed, remembered, approving. Even as the hours bleed into one another, even as the hum of calculation becomes part of my bloodstream, I do not stop. I continue my rituals. Log, approve, observe. Each minor deviation corrected, each approval granted, each cascade of light across the array is both a reminder and a comfort. I am here, human and flawed, among machines flawless and eternal. Chalak. A final voice echoes across the northern expanse. Residual interference corrected. All quadrants report within parameters. Human authorization confirmed. I tap the tablet one last time for the cycle. Approval granted. Compliance satisfied. Observation complete. And in that small, meaningless act, I feel a trace of power, a spark of presence. I am Chalak. Redundant, unnecessary, human, watching the universe unfold, bearing witness to perfection and surviving. Even here, at the edge of comprehension, I am alive. The northern horizon stretches endlessly beneath the fading light of the planet's slow rotation, a lattice of metal and light reaching toward infinity. I stand alone amid the array, boots clicking softly against the graded walkways, but there's no one to hear them. The androids move around me with mechanical precision, adjusting, calculating, correcting, perfectly indifferent to my presence, my thoughts, my existence. I watch them work, noting the way every sensor realigns with the speed and accuracy of a mind that surpasses anything human. Every micro-deviation is corrected instantly, every calculation performed without hesitation, without error, without the need for me. And yet, I am here. Chalak, the token human, necessary only on paper, irrelevant in action. Chalak. One android calls, voice neutral, precise. Quadrant 67 requires authorization for minor phase adjustment. Residual interference at 0.0005 degrees. I tap the tablet without looking. Approval granted. Another correction ripples across the lattice, another reminder that my authority is symbolic. I exhale, letting the weight of the day settle into my chest. The repetition, the endless approvals, the constant observation. It all presses down like the gravity of a planet too large to escape. I think about my life, about the path that led me here. Years of missteps, mispronunciations, bureaucratic humiliation. My name, Chalak, has followed me through every office, every classroom, every dead-end assignment. A misaligned word, a stubborn label, the only constant in a world that never quite accepted me. And now, standing at the edge of the Northern Hemisphere array, it carries me, reminds me that even if the universe does not care, I persist. Quadrant 72 reports phase drift, another android says. Authorization required. I tap the screen again. Correction applied. I step back, watching the light ripple across the receivers, waves upon waves of calculation. Precision beyond comprehension. I feel small here, stupidly small. The perfection around me makes every human flaw in my body and mind feel sharper, more pronounced, more humiliating. I am a relic in the middle of a symphony that no human can play, a witness to something beyond my reach. yet tethered here by persistence, failure, and bureaucratic insistence. Isolation is more than physical. It is the knowledge that no one else will ever understand this place as I do. The androids do not speak as humans do. They do not speak at all unless prompted, and even then, their voices are devoid of warmth, devoid of empathy. They understand calculations, parameters, deviations. They do not understand loneliness, frustration, or resentment. I am here, and I am alone, with billions of photons bending through billions of receivers, each one performing perfectly, each one indifferent to the human watching. I pause at the junction overlooking a cluster of triangular sensors, letting my gaze wander over the lattice. The air, or whatever passes for air here, carries the faint vibration of computation, low and constant, like a heartbeat I cannot touch. I remember classrooms where my name was laughed at, offices where it was fumbled on forms, colleagues who never got past the letters to see the person beneath. And now, my name is mine alone, tethered to me here at the edge of a planet and a universe that barely acknowledges its significance. Chalak. An android calls from the northern sector. Network efficiency is optimal. Calibration complete across all observed quadrants. Optimal, I mutter, voice low. Yes, I see. And I am here because it's required. I step along the scaffold, boots clicking, watching light refracted electronically, phase shifts corrected faster than thought, errors anticipated before they exist. I feel resentment coil in my chest, tight and metallic. Resentment at the machines that render me irrelevant. Resentment at the mission that demands my presence yet gives me no power. Resentment at the life that funneled me into this role, made me the human necessary for nothing but observation. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Time has no meaning here, only cycles of adjustment, waves of light, hums of calculation. I perform my duties mechanically. Approve, log, authorize, observe. I ask questions occasionally, but I know the answers are irrelevant, calculated in advance, already known by the lattice of receivers. My frustration is a private thing, sharpened by the perfection surrounding me. I am human, they are not. I am flawed, they are flawless. I think about survival, about persistence, about the stubborn insistence that has carried me to this point. Chalak exists. That is something no algorithm, no calibration, no phase correction can erase. But it is a small something, a faint spark in a universe that cares little for individual existence. The androids do their work. I do mine. Observation is sufficient. Presence verified. Operational parameters unaffected. And I am left with the quiet weight of knowing that nothing depends on me. A faint wind stirs across the scaffold, carrying the vibration of distant emitters, whispering through the lattice of light and metal. I lean against the railing, letting my mind wander through the years, through failures, through moments of misunderstanding, mispronunciation, humiliation. Every bureaucratic step, every administrative oversight, every small defeat led me here. To watch perfection unfold, knowing it would do so without me. To approve motions that require no human hand. To log observations that are functionally meaningless. And yet, I persist. I exist, Chalak. Wrong, unique, stubbornly human. Isolation presses against me like the thin atmosphere above the array. But it does not break me. Resentment simmers beneath the surface, a constant hum alongside the mechanical vibration of the array. It sharpens my awareness, keeps me conscious of my place, reminds me that even if I am unnecessary, I am still present. Chalak, the android beside me says, voice calm and precise. All quadrants report within tolerances. Human oversight requirements met. I exhale sharply. Yes, I say, voice low. Requirements met. Compliance satisfied. Observation complete. I step back and watch as the lattice shimmers, a wave of light passing across billions of receivers. My chest tightens. The perfection is beautiful, terrifying, humiliating. And yet, I am here. Witness, human, Chalak. I recall the administrators, the bureaucracies, the years of mispronunciations, the moments when my name and my presence were challenged. None of it prepared me for this. Standing at the edge of comprehension, the northern hemisphere array stretching infinitely, the hum of billions of receivers vibrating through my body. I am unnecessary, yet required. Small, yet visible. Flawed, yet persistent. The day ends, or what passes for a day here. Light from distant stars glints across the lattice, refracted electronically through billions of nodes. The androids continue their work, unchanged, indifferent. I watch, noting the cycles, the corrections, the precision, feeling the isolation press against me, feeling resentment coil tighter. This is my life, Chalak, the token human, a ceremonial presence in a world that no longer requires me. I step back from the scaffolding's edge, letting the hum vibrate through me, letting the perfection wash over my inadequacy. And still, I exist. I am Chalak, wrong, persistent, human, witness, observer, irrelevant, but stubbornly present. Resentment simmers, awareness sharpens, and in that quiet collision of feelings, I accept the truth. I am small, unnecessary, but still here. And that, somehow, is enough. Hours, or maybe days, time had no real meaning inside the Northern Hemisphere array, passed in routine. Adjustments, authorizations, logs, approvals, the steady rhythm of human redundancy in a lattice of flawless computation. The hum of electronics, the faint vibration underfoot, and the soft glow of the receivers filled the empty spaces, a chorus of precision I could never hope to match. And yet, something flickered in the periphery of the displays. At first, it was subtle, a tiny pinprick of light barely perceptible among billions of reconstructed photons. A shift so small that a casual observer, or even an android not prompted to note it, might dismiss it as statistical noise. Hand hovering over the tablet, eyes narrowing, the anomaly drew my attention with an almost magnetic insistence. Something about it felt alive. Quadrant analysis confirms a microsignal, one android said, voice neutral. Cross-referencing arrays, signal coherence, 0.0012 standard deviation. Interpretation, minor, non-critical, minor, non-critical. The words hit like nails on metal. The machines were correct in their assessment. Statistically, the pinprick was insignificant. Yet a pull, irrational, human, kept me leaning closer. Something about it defied the sterile perfection of the array. It mattered, though why or how remained beyond the limits of algorithmic calculation. Fingers traced the streams of data, scanning photon counts, wavelengths, angles of incidence. Each readout confirmed what I already suspected. The signal existed, and no past reading, no matter how thorough, had ever captured it. A record of the universe had shifted, just slightly, at the edge of detection. My eyes jumped between charts, every variation logged, every micro-fluctuation compared obsessively to previous days. Temporal persistence confirmed. The android continued. Signal integrity holds over 3 microcycles. Conclusion. Likely transient artifact or cosmic noise. I shook my head, muttering under my breath. Transient. Artifact. It's there. It wasn't there before. That's enough. The words sounded hollow even as I said them, yet I could not tear my gaze away. The pinprick of light was a single, stubborn point in a sea of order, a tiny rebellion against the monotony that had defined my life in this place. Hours blurred, each pass through the data revealed something subtle, a slight oscillation in intensity, a micro shift in angle, a photon count that refused to conform to prior expectations. The androids logged, cataloged, and repeated their calculations without emotion, offering confidence levels, standard deviations, and cross-references, but never awe, never curiosity. Awe was mine alone, and it burned through the tedious veneer of oversight that had suffocated me for years. Leaning closer to the display, I found myself whispering to no one, words bouncing back only in the faint hum of the array. You're new, you shouldn't exist here, but you do, and I'm going to figure out what you are. The words were part determination, part confession, part desperation. The flicker of light became more than data. It became an entity in its own right, a point of possibility in the otherwise endless, calculated perfection. One of the androids, moving along the scaffold beside me, tilted its head, or something approximating the human equivalent. Observation confirmed. Signal coherence above threshold. Minor variance detected across temporal frames. Recommend continuous monitoring. Continuous monitoring. Finally, a suggestion that aligned with my obsession. Without hesitation, I pulled up a series of past datasets, overlaying them in rapid sequence, mapping deviations, comparing angles, photon counts, reconstructed images. Every comparison strengthened the sense that this was not mere noise, Not a random fluctuation, not an error in measurement. It was something else, something new. Have you noticed anything unusual? I asked aloud, voice low. Something outside the statistical norms? Something alive? The android processed. Deviation within predicted tolerance. Signal classified as non-critical anomaly. Further attention optional. Optional. The word struck sharply. Optional. Years of being unnecessary had hardened the response to bureaucracy, but now a spark, tiny, persistent, refused to be smothered. Something mattered. I mattered, in this instance, because this tiny flicker of light had captured the uniquely human attention I could offer. My curiosity, my obsession, my refusal to dismiss what the machines could not see. For once, they were incomplete. I leaned into the screens, eyes scanning the reconstructed photon streams. Every microcycle, every wavelength, every variation was a puzzle piece, and I was the only human capable of seeing the pattern, of recognizing the anomaly against the backdrop of perfection. It became an all-consuming task, one that demanded focus, analysis, and intuition. The thrill of discovery, muted for so long by monotony, flared like a torch inside the quiet corridors of the array. Minutes stretched into hours. Adjustments were made, cross-references logged, readings replayed. The pinprick of light persisted, stubborn and unmistakable, a tiny, personal rebellion against the sterile order of the machines. And, for the first time in years, the token human, Chalak, was more than a ceremonial presence. Observation had become significance. Obsession had become purpose. Quadrant 78 cross-alignment complete. Another android intoned. Signal remains within non-critical classification. Further analysis recommended only if human oversight deems necessary. Finally, my human judgment was granted the tiniest sliver of authority. A spark of importance in the midst of irrelevance. Fingers danced across the tablet, cataloging the anomaly, overlaying it against prior records, noting shifts, angles, brightness variations. Each entry was meticulous, obsessive, deliberate. The pinprick of light had transformed from statistical noise to a locus of human meaning, a point where intuition and curiosity overrode the perfection of computation. Hours passed without pause. Screens glowed. Receivers hummed. Androids moved like clockwork, their precision unmatched, their indifference absolute. And yet, the human heart raced. Every slight fluctuation was a mystery, every deviation a call to attention, every photon a message from somewhere beyond comprehension. For a fleeting moment, the monotony of years melted away. The endless approvals, the redundant authorizations, the ceremonial presence, all of it dissolved before the pull of something genuinely new. A pinprick of light at the edge of the universe became my obsession, my proof that human intuition still mattered, even in a place designed to render it irrelevant. Leaning back from the display, rubbing tired eyes, a sense of exhilaration washed over me. Not pride, not yet, but something rare and sharp. Engagement, focus, purpose. A tiny spark in a life otherwise defined by redundancy and observation. The machines continued their work, indifferent, flawless, relentless. I remained, watching, calculating, hypothesizing, human in a way that no android could replicate, bound to a curiosity that no algorithm could anticipate. The anomaly pulsed, tiny and unyielding, and in its stubborn existence lay the promise of something more. Something beyond compliance, beyond oversight, beyond meaningless ceremony. For the first time in years, being Chalak, being human, felt necessary. Not by design, not by protocol, but because the spark of discovery belonged only to me. Hours passed in quiet tension, punctuated only by the low hum of the array and the soft clicks of receivers aligning across the vast northern hemisphere. Focused entirely on the displays before me, I replayed the latest photon reconstructions, overlaying angles, brightness levels, and temporal shifts. The pinprick of light had persisted through multiple cycles, stubborn and almost imperceptible, yet it refused to be dismissed. Chalak, one android said, voice neutral, moving beside me on the narrow catwalk. Signal coherence remains within non-critical parameters. Standard deviation, 0.0013. Probability of statistical fluctuation, 0.842. Interpretation, likely insignificant. Insignificant for you, I muttered, leaning closer to the display. But it wasn't there yesterday. Nothing like it. Do you see it at all, or are you just reading numbers? The android paused, tilting its head slightly, mimicking curiosity. Observation is continuous. Signal classified, cataloged, and monitored. No deviation exceeds operational thresholds. Confirmation of presence is noted. Interpretation beyond thresholds is unnecessary. Unnecessary? I pressed, voice sharper than intended. You're telling me that something literally appearing at the edge of our detection field is irrelevant? Tell me you don't notice the pattern forming over time. The micro fluctuations, the angles, the slight oscillation in photon density? Pattern recognition applied. Deviations remain within predictive models. Variation consistent with cosmic background anomalies. Human speculation unnecessary to array function. Unnecessary. The word sat like a lead weight. Years of redundant oversight had drilled the idea into me. My presence was ceremonial, my authority symbolic. Yet here I was, eyes fixed, pulse rising, convinced that the tiny flicker had significance the androids could never quantify. A point of curiosity that no algorithm could anticipate. Chalak, another android said, joining us. Confidence levels across the primary northern array indicate 84.7% certainty that the anomaly is statistical in nature. Do you require additional recalculation? Yes, I snapped, almost too quickly. I require recalculation. I need every micro-adjustment of photon counts and every slight temporal deviation. I want overlays of every quadrant, past and present. I want angles recalculated in 32 microsecond increments. My voice trailed off, swallowed by the low hum of the lattice. Directive noted. Recalculation initiated, it said, already executing the commands with flawless efficiency. Screens updated automatically, running through permutations faster than I could follow. Each pass confirmed the anomaly's presence, stubborn against prediction, subtle against perfection. They're faster than I can even comprehend, I muttered aloud, partly in awe, partly in frustration. You run circles around me, Chalak, and yet you cannot see what I see. A faint pause from the first android. Observation noted. Human assessment identifies significance beyond statistical analysis. Clarification. Human determination does not alter operational parameters. I rubbed my temples, and yet I am the overseer. I am supposed to add value. I am supposed to matter. You add oversight within parameters defined. The android replied. Deviation in judgment does not affect array functionality. Value is procedural. Procedural. I felt the familiar sting of redundancy claw at my chest. Hours of monotonous approvals and meaningless logs. But this pinprick, this tiny defiance of the cosmos, was mine to interpret, mine to obsess over, mine to argue about. And argue, I did, silently at first. Calculations, cross-references, probability overlays, variations in photon density. Every micro shift in the signal was an argument I made in my head. Chalak, the second android said, voice softer, almost conversational in its mimicry of human tone. Continuity checks indicate the anomaly remains coherent across 34 temporal frames. Repetition confirms stability. Suggestion. Focus on analysis metrics rather than hypothetical significance. Hypothetical significance? I leaned toward it, exhaling sharply. Do you understand the human mind at all? Do you comprehend obsession? Risk? Curiosity. There's a difference between your metrics and what it feels like to recognize something entirely new. Something that might actually matter. The android tilted its head. Human effect recognized. Emotional response. Curiosity. Obsession. Interpretation of new data. All out. Operationally irrelevant. Observation permitted. Hypothesis formulation optional. Optional, of course. Optional for me to care. Optional for me to be relevant. Yet the pull was magnetic. My fingers moved across the tablet automatically, adjusting parameters, overlaying data, calculating every permutation I could think of. The machines executed flawlessly, without emotion, without doubt, without hesitation. But I could not stop. Not now. Not when a single flicker of light had captivated a part of my mind long dormant, untouched by oversight, redundancy, and ritual. Chalak, the first android said again, if anomaly analysis is pursued, suggested next steps include cross-array triangulation, microsecond recalibration of phase alignment, and temporal drift monitoring. I'm doing that, I muttered. I've already begun, but I'm not just watching. I'm thinking. I'm seeing patterns you cannot see. You'll calculate numbers, but you will never recognize Possibility. You'll never feel the pull of something unknown appearing for the first time. Human comprehension acknowledged. It replied. Voice monotone but precise. Operational efficiency unaffected. Probability of discovery within acceptable parameters. Unchanged. Unchanged. That word repeated in my mind as I scrolled through the overlays, rotating reconstructed light across all axes, replaying photon streams at microsecond intervals. Every time the pinprick shifted, fractionally, my pulse quickened. The array hummed, mechanically perfect, perfectly indifferent. And yet, in my chest, the human need to understand burned brighter. They call you Chalak, I said aloud, almost to myself. But does the name matter to you? You exist to calculate, to monitor, to validate. Do you care that this is me, standing here, obsessing over a tiny dot of light at the edge of nowhere? The second android responded, its voice soft but unyielding. Chalak acknowledged. Identification complete. Care, not required for operational compliance. Observation. Sufficient. Observation sufficient, I muttered. That's what this is, isn't it? You observe. You calculate. You never care. You never dream. You never wonder. A brief pause. Then the first android said, human speculation permits exploration of non-critical phenomena. Observation is noted. Analysis will proceed under human directive. Confirmation required for further investigative measures. Confirmation typed. Thumb tapping automatically. Each motion was ceremonial. Each log entry a ritual of redundancy. And yet, unlike every day for the past years, the ritual had purpose. It meant something. I could argue with them, debate, hypothesize, push for recalculations, overlay readings, and explore scenarios they could only mimic mathematically. My obsession, my fixation, my uniquely human insistence on meaning, had value they could not provide. Minutes stretched into hours. The pinprick remained. I continued recalculating, adjusting, overlaying, comparing. Probability assessments were generated, confidence intervals charted, temporal coherence verified. And still, a human mind worked against the indifferent perfection of machine logic, hunting for significance where the android saw none. Finally, I leaned back, exhaling, voice low. You're faster than I can keep up with. You're perfect. You're never wrong, but you're blind. And I see it. I see it even if you do not. Even if it turns out to be nothing, it's mine to notice first. Mine to obsess over. Mine to feel. Human recognition of novelty recorded, the first android said. Operational effect, none. Emotional processing, acknowledged. Observation continues under human directive. And so it went, the hours folding into themselves. I continued my obsessive analysis, tapping confirmations, reviewing overlays, replaying photon streams. The machines executed flawlessly, mechanically, unflinchingly, indifferent to curiosity, obsession, or purpose. I remained human, flawed, emotional, fascinated, and utterly unable to ignore a single flicker of light. By the time the northern hemisphere array dimmed faintly for routine maintenance cycles, the pinprick persisted. The thrill of fixation remained, sharper, more urgent. The contrast between my human obsession and the android's indifferent precision could not have been clearer. For the first time, oversight meant more than logging compliance. For the first time, it meant noticing. Something mattered. And in noticing, in obsessing, in refusing to dismiss the anomaly, I mattered too. Pulling up the URI's reference database, I scrolled through layers of cosmological models, simulation outputs, and historical readings. My fingers hovered over the interface, hesitant for a moment as if the machines themselves understood the weight of what I was about to do. This wasn't routine calibration. This wasn't phase alignment. This was speculation. Pure human obsession interfacing with the relentless precision of artificial minds. Chalak, one android said, sliding into view beside the workstation. Query detected. Reference materials engaged. Desired parameters. Cosmology, eternal inflation. Multiverse hypotheses. Confirmation required for data presentation. Confirm, I said immediately, pressing the tablet. And cross-reference any recent simulations of extra-universal phenomena. Anything showing localized deviations in background radiation. Anything that could explain a faint point of light beyond known space. Data unfolded in layers across the display. Simulations, probability charts, and photon stream reconstructions. I leaned closer, eyes scanning the numbers, tracing every tiny fluctuation. The pinprick pulsed subtly in my mind as I overlaid it on the models, wondering how it might fit. "Look at this," I said, almost aloud, fingers tracing curves on the screen. "See the deviation in quadrant 37? It's micro, almost lost in noise, but consistent across 3 independent simulations. Could this be something forming outside our universe?" The android regarded the display. Deviation recorded. Probability of statistical fluctuation, 0.78. Cross-referenced. Models. No exact match. Human hypothesis. Unquantifiable. Suggest further analysis if desired. Unquantifiable, I muttered, running my hand through my hair. Exactly. And that's why I care. You can calculate probabilities, but you don't know what it feels like to see the unknown, to imagine what could exist beyond these numbers. To think, there is a fragment of reality somewhere no one has ever witnessed. No algorithm can grasp that. The second android interjected, tone calm. Human emotional response noted. Analysis permitted under observation. Probability recalculation in progress. Potential universes modeled. 32. Temporal parameters. 32 microseconds per increment. 32 microseconds, I said, letting the numbers sink in. You can track everything that moves faster than I can think. Yet the question remains, why now? Why here? Something appeared that wasn't there yesterday. And it's not just a fluctuation. Look at the coherence. Look at the temporal alignment. It's consistent. Consistency within predicted fluctuation margins. 0.002 degrees phase deviation. The first android replied. Signal remains within operational thresholds. Significance for human observation. Subjective. I exhaled sharply, leaning back, and tapped the tablet. Subjective. Right. But my subjectivity is the only reason we're even looking at this. My intuition, my gut, call it what you want. Algorithms don't dream. They don't hypothesize. They don't imagine a universe forming out there, beyond our grasp. I do. Human hypothesis acknowledged, the second android said. Interpretation. Unquantifiable. Operational impact. None. Query. Proposed next steps for hypothesis testing? Run the simulations, I said, almost too quickly. Compare the latest readings against cosmic microwave background reconstructions. Include phase-shifted cross-calibrations from neighboring quadrants. Overlay all historical anomalies from the past 4 cycles. And, most importantly, run speculative models of eternal inflation. A pause, a mechanical whir as calculation started. Directive executed. Temporal estimation, complete within 37 milliseconds. Comparative analysis initiated. Hypothesis processing permitted under human observation. I leaned closer, almost pressing my forehead to the screen. 37 milliseconds. Faster than a human could blink. Faster than I could think. Yet I was the one injecting meaning into the numbers. The thrill, the rush, was electric. For the first time in years, my brain felt alive. Firing. Straining at the limits of perception. The monotony of administration, of logging approvals, of ceremonial oversight, evaporated. This was discovery, or at least, the first human step toward it. Chalak, the first android said after a moment, preliminary simulations suggest the anomaly could correspond to a low-probability emergent bubble universe. Probability, 0.016. Phase coherence across reconstructed photon streams, high. Temporal stability, consistent over observed cycles. Hypothesis, formation of extrinsic universe fragment possible. Further calculation required. I almost laughed, though it came out as a tense breath. Did you just say, extrinsic universe fragment possible? I asked. I don't care about probability margins. I care about potential. Potential! Something new. Something never seen before. Forming while we've been staring at the empty void for decades. Potential acknowledged, the android said. Calculations continue. Probability refinement underway. Input required for speculative projection. Human interpretive model suggested. I hesitated, letting my mind reach beyond the numbers. Let's run it as if the bubble universe exists, I said. Assume coherence. Assume stability. Assume that photons are traveling from the edge of an embryonic reality into our array. See what the models predict. See what it would do to our universe if it merged. If it expanded. If it stayed hidden. Run it. A faint mechanical hum. The whir of processors. Calculations unfolding faster than thought. Directive acknowledged, the first android replied. Speculative projection complete. Observations recorded. Human assessment required. I traced the curves, watched the photon overlays, and imagined shapes of a nascent universe forming like a bubble, isolated but self-contained, a tiny seed of reality in the cold dark beyond our sensors. It thrilled me, a rare spark of intellectual engagement. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from excitement, from purpose, from the fragile, exhilarating certainty that for once, human intuition might lead the way. Chalak, the second android said, probability of observable interference with primary array, 0.0023. Predicted effects on local photon reconstruction, minimal. System integrity, unaffected. Operational parameters remain optimal. I leaned back, letting the words settle. Minimal interference, perfect, I said, because the discovery itself is the point. The numbers don't matter. You'll never feel the thrill, the possibility, the sheer mind-bending wonder of imagining a universe forming out there. That's human. That's why I exist here. That's why I still matter. The android's head tilted slightly. Existence of human interpretive model recognized. Emotional impact acknowledged. Operational efficiency unchanged. Query: would you like additional cross-validation with alternate cosmological theories? Yes, I said immediately. Include eternal inflation parameters, multiverse overlap simulations, theoretical models of universe genesis, even fringe hypotheses that would normally be dismissed. Everything that might intersect with the data. Let's see where imagination and numbers collide. The display changed, cascading with layered overlays, timelines, photon traces, and simulated bubble expansions. My eyes darted across them, fingers moving instinctively to highlight anomalies, zoom in on unexpected alignments, rotate the three-dimensional reconstructions. The androids calculated, cross-checked, and cataloged with perfect efficiency, producing data I couldn't possibly process fully. Yet I could interpret the narrative thread in my mind, the story of something emerging at the far edge of everything. Minutes passed, hours, perhaps, time warped in the quiet hum of the array. My pulse raced in sync with the simulations, every frame of photon data a heartbeat, every fluctuation a whisper of possibility. The machines processed, perfect, indifferent. I imagined, hypothesized, speculated. Human in every sense, alive in a way the androids never could be. Chalak, the first android said after a long pause, models suggest the potential universe fragment remains coherent over 33 simulated microseconds. Probability of sustained formation, 0.009. Further observation recommended. Input required for continued speculative modeling. Keep watching, I said, fingers hovering over the interface. Keep recalculating, recalibrating, reprojecting, and I'll keep imagining. We'll see what becomes of it. For a moment, the routine, the monotony, the years of being redundant, ceremonial, and unnecessary, they all vanished. Here, in the sterile glow of reconstructed light, I mattered. My human curiosity, my obsession, my fixation on something beyond measurement. It was the one thing the array could never replicate. The thrill continued, every new overlay a pulse of discovery. I plotted, recalculated, imagined consequences, ran probability models alongside impossible speculations, hypothesized timelines for development, and debated possibilities with androids incapable of argument in any human sense. They offered numbers. I offered imagination. Together, we formed a bridge between perfection and possibility. Hours later, as the array continued its silent, unerring work, I paused for the first time. Sweat dampened my hair. My mind buzzed with equations, probabilities, and fantasies. The pinprick remained, stubborn and inscrutable. And for the first time in years, I realized I had purpose beyond paperwork, beyond ceremonial presence, beyond human redundancy. The spark of intellectual engagement burned bright. For once, my human mind led the mission, if only in interpretation and speculation. Even if it were nothing, even if it turned out to be a statistical fluctuation, this moment, the rush of curiosity, the obsessive analysis, the human need to understand, was mine. No android could replicate it. No algorithm could substitute for it. I was Chalak, human, observer, speculator, and for the first time in years, I mattered. Photon streams poured in from the distant reaches of space, invisible threads of light traveling billions of years to reach our sensors. Watching them converge in real time was hypnotic, almost overwhelming. The pinprick I had noticed earlier began to solidify in the computational reconstructions, initially a flicker, then a coherent point of light. My eyes darted across the display, tracing the algorithms as they performed Fourier transforms on incoming signals, stitching together millions of discrete measurements from the phased array. Chalak, one android said, voice neutral but precise. The integrated readings from quadrants 15 through 38 indicate signal coherence at a 0.0003 degree margin of error. Reconstructed amplitude shows minor variation, less than 0.05% per cycle. Cross-correlation with prior photon arrivals confirms stability of temporal alignment. Temporal alignment, I muttered, leaning closer to the holographic projection. Let's make sure the cross-phase calibration is applied. The delay correction across quadrant 23 and 26 must match the signal travel time with femtosecond precision. I don't want any phase smearing to contaminate this. Confirmed, the android replied, adjusting the synthetic phase delays in real time. Applied corrections maintain coherence across all active modules. Predicted signal distortion minimized to below quantum noise threshold. Observation efficiency, optimal. The thrill of seeing something unknown emerge from raw data made the air, or whatever passed for air in the array chamber, feel electric. I could trace the photons back to their origin coordinates, using computational imaging techniques to reconstruct the light field. Each photon had a path, a wavefront, a phase, and the array measured them all, combining the results into a coherent spatial reconstruction. The precision was terrifying. Errors smaller than Planck scale uncertainties corrected automatically by the network of arrays. Chalak, the second android said, there is a detectable anisotropy in the incoming light. Angular deviation across the projected wavefront, 0.00012 degrees. Should we apply dynamic beamforming to compensate? Yes, I said quickly, fingers flying across the interface. Do it incrementally. I want the reconstructed intensity map free of phase distortion. Overlay the photon flux density gradient in 3 dimensions. Track it over time. The holographic display shifted, revealing a shimmering lattice of light intensities. Colors were false, assigned to photon energies, but the pattern was unmistakable. The point of light pulsed subtly, a heartbeat of photons reconstructed into a physical form I could almost grasp. I mapped its intensity against the local background radiation, noting the redshift and blueshift components, calculating an approximate luminosity distance. You're applying a human interpretive filter, the first android observed. All computations indicate a stable, coherent source. Human perception adds subjective uncertainty. Exactly, I said, eyes locked on the projection. I need to see the intensity gradient and the incoming wave angles. Those tiny variations might indicate lensing effects, gravitational distortion, or even interference from interstellar medium turbulence. Algorithms can measure, but only humans notice anomalies in patterns intuitively. Analysis underway, it replied. Current models, gravitational lensing from intervening mass estimated at 1.2 microarcseconds. Predicted optical distortion, negligible. Wavefront curvature within tolerance. I cross-checked that with the reconstructed photon streams, overlaying vector plots of incident angles. Even microarcsecond deviations could indicate massive structures between here and the source, or something more exotic. I marked the deviations, adjusting the beamforming coefficients to optimize reconstruction fidelity. Chalak, the second android said, incoming flux shows periodic intensity fluctuation, 0.007% over 2.3 milliseconds. Hypothesis, intrinsic variability of source or interstellar scintillation. Recommendation, temporal analysis with Fourier decomposition. Do it, I said, almost trembling. I want to see if there's a pattern. Break it down into harmonics. Map phase shifts over time. Compare against cosmic microwave background noise and known pulsar signatures. Even a microsecond correlation could tell us whether this is natural or something else. While the array calculated, I focused on the subtleties. Slight wobble in the reconstructed point, shifts in brightness across different wavelengths, variations that might indicate gravitational lensing, Doppler shift, or relativistic effects. My eyes moved constantly, comparing simulated predictions to the live reconstructions. I could almost feel the photons brushing past me, each one a tiny messenger from the edge of the observable universe, a fragment of truth traveling across light years to land in my awareness. Chalak, the first android said. Beamforming optimization complete. Wavefront reconstruction displays coherence at 99.9997%. Residual phase deviation, 0.00004 degrees. Photonic noise within predicted quantum statistical bounds. I exhaled sharply. Perfect. Now run a virtual ray tracing sequence across the reconstructed light field. Simulate interactions with intervening baryonic matter, interstellar dust clouds, and potential dark matter concentrations. I want to see if the point could be distorted by unseen mass. Directive accepted, it replied. Simulation in progress. Estimated completion, 1.4 milliseconds. Data logged for temporal pattern analysis. Watching the display, I overlaid spectra from ultraviolet through infrared, each wavelength a layer, each pulse a note in a silent symphony. The pinprick, my tiny point of obsession, was growing clearer, defined by thousands of cross-checked reconstructions. The array integrated each new reading, correcting for phase errors, subtracting background noise, adjusting for atmospheric interference from our orbital instruments. Every adjustment was imperceptible, yet cumulatively, they revealed something that wasn't supposed to exist, something I could sense before the machines even quantified it. You're treating the light like it has intention, the second android said. Photon paths are consistent with natural emission. No anomalies detected beyond statistical expectation. Maybe so, I said, leaning closer. But something feels different. Look at the intensity modulation across the spectrum. Even accounting for noise, there's coherence in fluctuations that doesn't match standard stochastic models. It's too precise. Human emotional response recorded, it replied. Operational parameters unaffected. Observation continues. I spent the next hours comparing the reconstructed light against the models of star formation, gamma-ray bursts, and faint quasars. I ran cross-checks against expected luminosity functions and overlaid them with gravitational lensing simulations, mapping vector fields across the holographic grid. Each calculation was routine for the array, but my interpretation added a human layer of meaning, a hypothesis, a story, a possibility. Chalak, the first android said, angular displacement of reconstructed point, 0.00018 degrees relative to initial detection. Phase variance minimal. Stability over observation period, high. Temporal coherence maintained. Yes, I whispered. That's why I noticed it. It's stable, yet anomalous. Not random noise, not a statistical fluke. Something is forming out there. Something coherent, outside the models, outside expectation. I marked each subtle change, overlaying Doppler shifts, time-lagged flux analysis, and intensity maps across the spectrum. I noted the micro-wobble in reconstructed coordinates, possibly a gravitational lens, possibly an artifact, possibly something else entirely. Each possibility sent a thrill through me, the rare rush of human curiosity against perfect computation. The androids offered efficiency statistics, probability projections, and validation logs. Precise, emotionless, perfect. I translated them into narrative in my mind, a story of photons traveling across the void, a bubble of light emerging at the periphery of all we can observe, and me, human, flawed, obsessed, watching it come alive. Chalak, the second android said finally, integrated reconstruction now complete. Signal-to-noise ratio exceeds operational threshold. Coherent point of light confirmed. Historical comparison. No prior detection at this location. Recommendation. Continued observation and enhanced temporal resolution imaging. Exactly, I said, fingers tracing the holographic contours. Enhanced temporal resolution. I want femtosecond scale reconstruction over the next 1,000 cycles. Map it in 3 dimensions. Include full spectral decomposition. Track any angular deviation. Cross-reference every photon against past data. This is what matters. And so I watched endlessly, feverishly, tracing, marking, calculating, imagining. The machines performed their work with terrifying precision. I brought obsession, intuition, and the flicker of human wonder. The pinprick of light grew into a small, defined object within the array's reconstruction, an enigma that had no name, no certainty, but carried the thrill of discovery. My heart raced with each subtle shift, each coherent pattern, each variation I could map but could never fully quantify. Hours, or days, time became meaningless. passed as I maintained the observation, obsessively mapping intensity, phase, wavelength, and angular variations. The machines hummed, recalculated, and refined. I narrated silently, annotating, theorizing, speculating. For the first time in years, I felt purpose in this barren, metallic expanse. This was discovery in its purest form, human curiosity imposed on the indifferent perfection of computation. Even as the array rendered the pinprick more clearly, defining every photon path and reconstructing its light with impossibly high fidelity, I realized it wasn't just the point of light that mattered. It was me, human, observing, interpreting, understanding, not just as a spectator, but as a participant in discovery. This small spark, a human mind mapping photons across billions of light years, was my rebellion against redundancy. And I would not stop. A strange stillness settled in once the reconstruction stabilized. The array continued its endless hum, phase corrections rippling across quadrants faster than thought, but something inside me finally stopped spinning. The point of light held steady in the projection, no longer a flicker, no longer questionable. It was there, it existed, and, for once, it existed because I had refused to dismiss it. The feeling was unfamiliar enough to be unsettling. Pride crept in quietly, not as a rush, but as a weightlifting. Years of approvals, compliance confirmations, ceremonial oversight, none of that had ever led to this. This had come from attention, from fixation, from refusing to treat a statistical outlier as disposable noise. Signal coherence remained stable, an android said beside me. Temporal variance within predicted bounds. Observation may be deprioritized pending scheduled review. No, I said immediately. The word came out sharper than intended. It doesn't get deprioritized. A pause, not a processing delay, just the illusion of one, a courtesy baked into their interaction protocols. Clarify, the android replied. Current mission parameters do not classify this signal as urgent. That's because mission parameters are backward-looking, I said, eyes never leaving the projection. They're built on everything we already understand. This isn't that. The hologram rotated slowly, the pinprick suspended in false color space, spectral bands layered like translucent skin. I pulled up the longitudinal data again, overlaying temporal drift, phase stability, and photon arrival distributions. The numbers still didn't scream anomaly. That was the problem. Whatever this was, it behaved too well. Run the Bayesian novelty filter again, I said. Not with standard priors. Strip out known stellar formation models, quasars, pulsars, lensing artifacts. Treat everything else as ignorance. Adjusting priors to null reference, the android replied. Resulting probability space will be broad and inefficient. Exactly, I said. I want to see what survives when we admit we don't know. The recalculation unfolded in real time. Probability clouds bloomed and collapsed as the system iterated, discarding familiar explanations. The pinprick remained, reduced, constrained, but stubbornly present. There, I said quietly, that's the part you don't care about. Persistence. Persistence alone does not imply significance, the android said. Numerous astrophysical phenomena exhibit long-term stability. Yes, inside the universe, I said. This isn't inside anything we've mapped. I pulled up the cosmological boundary models, the edge of observation scaffolding that defined our working universe. The pinprick sat just beyond the statistical fall-off. Not far, insultingly close, but far enough to be uncomfortable. Too far for conventional emission sources. Too coherent for random background fluctuation. You're assuming spatial exteriority, the android said. The concept of outside the universe lacks operational definition. Operational definition isn't the same as conceptual impossibility, I shot back. Inflation didn't care whether we were comfortable with it. Neither did dark energy. The android tilted its head a fraction, a purely performative gesture. Hypothesis. The signal originates from a causally disconnected region. Probability estimate, extremely low. Everything new starts there, I said. Low probability. No precedent, no category. The words hung between us. For once, I wasn't arguing with a machine because it was wrong. I was arguing because it couldn't want to be right. The realization settled in slowly. This was why I was here. Not to approve microsecond adjustments. Not to log compliance metrics. I was here to notice the thing that didn't fit cleanly. To sit with discomfort instead of smoothing it out. I leaned back against the console, letting the data wash over me again. Photon counts, spectral skew, angular stability. The numbers were beautiful, but the beauty wasn't in their perfection. It was in their defiance. This point of light refused to disappear no matter how aggressively the models tried to explain it away. Chalak, the android said, using my name with the same flat precision as always. Your engagement metrics show elevated cognitive focus. This task exceeds assigned oversight requirements. I know, I said. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth before I could stop it. That's the point. For years, everything I had done here fit neatly into predefined boxes. Oversight, authorization, observation. All roles designed to keep a human present without letting a human matter. Now, without permission, something had crossed that boundary. I zoomed in again, watching the array refine the reconstruction as new photons arrived. Each correction tightened the image, not dramatically, but enough to feel alive. Subtle oscillations in intensity hinted at internal structure or interaction with something we hadn't accounted for yet. Let's talk theory, I said, turning slightly toward the android. Not probabilities, possibilities. Specify constraints, it replied. None, I said. That's the experiment. Another pause. Longer this time. Proceed, the android said. Eternal inflation, I began. Bubble universes nucleating in a false vacuum. Most never intersect. Some brush past each other. If one formed close enough, close in a way that only makes sense on an inflating manifold, we might see leakage. Photons, gravitational imprint, something small. You're describing boundary interaction between causally distinct spacetimes, the android said. No empirical confirmation exists. Neither did cosmic acceleration, until it did, I said. Neither did neutrino mass, or gravitational waves, or half the things we now take for granted. Probability remains negligible. Negligible isn't zero, I said. And it's not meaningless. The android processed silently while I kept talking, words spilling out faster now, fueled by something I hadn't felt in years. Speculation layered onto data, intuition riding alongside math instead of being crushed by it. Or maybe it's not another universe, I continued. Maybe it's a topological defect, a remnant from symmetry breaking, a scar in spacetime itself, radiating weakly, coherently, just enough to be seen if you weren't trying so hard to ignore it. Both hypotheses lack predictive power, the android replied. Right now, I said. So did plate tectonics once. The pinprick pulsed faintly again, intensity shifting by a fraction of a percent. My breath caught before I could stop it. Did you see that? I asked. Yes, the android said. Brightness fluctuation registered, within expected variance, but it's synchronized, I said. Look at the phase alignment across wavelengths. That's not noise. The android recalculated, slower this time, not because it had to, but because the instruction tree was getting complicated. Correlation confirmed, it said at last. Cause undetermined. A laugh escaped me, quiet and disbelieving. That's it, I said. That's the crack. For the first time since arriving here, I wasn't small. The array still dwarfed me. The universe still didn't care. But in this narrow slice of reality, attention mattered. Interpretation mattered. The machines could calculate forever and never care that something strange had appeared. I did. That was the difference. Hours passed without meaning. I barely noticed the shift cycles, the automated status updates, the endless background chatter of the array. Everything narrowed to that single point and what it implied. Not certainty, not answers, possibility. Chalak, the android said eventually, continued fixation does not alter system output. No, I said softly. But it alters mine. I stayed there, eyes locked on the projection, mind racing through implications I wasn't ready to write down yet. Reports could wait, committees could wait. This moment, this fragile alignment of data and curiosity, was rare. The array had finally given me something it couldn't finish on its own. And for the first time since stepping onto this cold, metallic world, being human felt less like a liability and more like a requirement. The pinprick of light hovered at the edge of everything we knew. And I hovered with it, unwilling to look away, knowing, without proof, without permission, that this was the reason I had endured all the years of being unnecessary. Not because efficiency belonged to me, or precision ever did, but because attention did, because noticing, lingering, and refusing to discard the strange was the one contribution no system here could replicate. The visualization on the array's main display kept shifting. The pinprick of light Chalak had been obsessing over beginning to swell, almost imperceptibly at first, but now with a pulse that could no longer be ignored. Stretching across the computational lattice, the anomaly had gone from a mere point to a smudge, faint but undeniable, as if it were breathing in slow, deliberate increments. Every photon streaming through the sensors carried a signal he traced obsessively, calculating angles of incidence, wavelength variations, phase coherence. The numbers refused to lie. Growth was real, steady, and somehow accelerating. A tight knot of panic formed in his chest. What had been a flicker of curiosity had mutated into a threat that could not be ignored. He ran the figures again, comparing them against his archived data. Distances calculated from parallax shifts placed the anomaly at a scale he could barely conceptualize. If this was indeed an emerging bubble universe or a fragment of space tearing into reality, the implications were beyond any scenario he had ever prepared for. Chalak, one android said, its voice calm. Signal amplitude indicates a 0.12% increase over the last hour. Growth rate within predicted variance. Predicted variance. The words felt like a knife. Predicted variance? Chalak said, leaning closer to the display, his fingers tracing the virtual grid lines of the array. Do you understand the scale here? I'm not asking about femtoseconds of deviation. I'm talking about something possibly larger than the universe itself, moving toward us. Confirmed. The android replied. Rate is within projected thresholds. No immediate intervention required. Rate within thresholds, he muttered. Pacing. You don't get it. It's not about thresholds. It's about magnitude. Magnitude that makes your thresholds meaningless. His hand slammed against the edge of the console, a sharp clack reverberating through the lab. The array didn't flinch. Not a single receiver skipped a cycle. Not a single photon misaligned. It was perfect. Mercilessly, unhelpfully perfect. Calculations ran through his mind in a looping frenzy. He measured angular displacement against baseline readings, ran growth projections in microseconds, tried to reconcile cosmological expansion models with what he was seeing on the displays. Each iteration raised new alarms in the back of his mind. If this anomaly continued expanding at even a fraction of the projected rate, the energy it carried would dwarf every cosmic phenomenon he had ever studied. Stars, galaxies, the empty void itself. Everything would be insignificant. Chalak. The android's voice cut again, almost casual in its precision, cross-reference with historic photon flux. Probability of anomaly being a spurious measurement is 0.00003. 0.00003? He said, exasperation slicing through fear. You're telling me the chance this is nothing is tiny, but your response is nothing. You treat this like a bug in the system. It's not a bug, it's massive, and it's real. System integrity verified. Observation ongoing. Interpretation deferred to human operator. The android replied. Deferred to human operator. The phrase hung in the air like an insult. He was the token human, the overseer, the ceremonial observer who could log and approve, but not change, not prevent, not interfere with the relentless unfolding of events. And yet, no matter the impossibility of action, his mind refused to stop racing. He plotted the anomaly's growth against the rotational vector of the planet, the alignment of the Uri's sensors, and the timing of photon arrivals. Everything intersected to a single conclusion. This was expanding toward them. Toward him. Hands gripping the console, Chalak leaned into the visualization, staring as the smudge of light stretched wider across the grid. Every shift in brightness, every fractional change in angle, whispered a warning in the only way his human intuition could hear it. The machines would continue their calculations with flawless detachment, but he alone felt the tremor in the logic of existence itself. Do you see it? He asked, almost pleading. Do you understand what this means? Observation acknowledged. Chalak, the android said, almost softly, as if conceding a courtesy it could not feel. Signal integrity verified. Growth measured. Probability of catastrophic interaction below 0.0001. Below 0.0001. Chalak's stomach turned. Probability meant nothing if the consequences were infinity. He pulled up additional models, the multiverse simulations, the eternal inflation scenarios, every theoretical framework in the array's database. Each model confirmed a chilling possibility. An emergent universe could collide with their location. Its mass, energy, and spatial temporal curvature utterly overwhelming anything in human experience. A low, metallic hum filled the room as the array processed the data, a rhythmic pulse that underlined his growing panic. The androids continued their silent routines, running alignments, integrating new photons, recalculating phase shifts. Not a single one looked to him, not a single one paused to consider the scale of what they were witnessing. It was methodical, objective, and terrifying. Sweat prickled at his temples as he ran his hands over the tablet, typing in adjustments, recalculating distance vectors, overlaying his own human projections on top of the machine's raw numbers. It was a futile attempt to intervene, but he could not stop himself. Eyes darted from one projection to the next, from growth rates to angular displacement to photon flux. The smudge of light continued to bloom across the grid. Chalak, another android said, joining the first. Projected expansion rate confirms continued growth at 0.14% per hour. No operational response required. No operational response required? He shouted, spinning around. Do you understand what's coming? It's not about operations. It's about survival, about everything we've ever known. Do you even comprehend the scale? Scale comprehension limited, data analyzed, probability matrices updated, the android said. Comprehension limited, data analyzed, matrices updated. Chalak's heart hammered, his pulse syncopating with the hum of the array. He was alone in the terror, alone in the responsibility, alone in the awareness that nothing around him could feel what he felt. And yet he could not tear his eyes away. Every microsecond mattered. Every photon mattered. Every tiny shift in the anomalous light was a heartbeat of a reality he might not survive. Step by step, he mapped the growth, correlating the smudge against theoretical constructs, past observations, and angular projections. He whispered calculations aloud, trying to reason with himself, trying to convince his own mind that some course of action might exist. None did. The expansion was inexorable. And still, he stared. Stared because there was nothing else to do. Stared because in the vast cold lattice of sensors and flawless computation, he alone could feel the terror, the awe, and the infinitesimal spark of human insight that no android could possess. Chalak's chest tightened as he watched the pinprick's expansion on the display. This isn't a suggestion. It's a threat, he said, gesturing at the grid, numbers and coordinates reflected across his glasses. Do you understand what a universe-sized mass moving toward us even implies? Comprehension of existential risk acknowledged. Chalak, the first android said, its tone flat, unwavering. Probability matrices indicate 0.0001 chance of collision with critical energy flux above defined thresholds. Array construction shall continue. Probability, he barked, turning to face it. Do you understand that probability doesn't matter when the consequences are infinite? When the energy involved exceeds anything humans can survive? When the mass is enough to bend space-time in ways we can't even model accurately? Thresholds exceeded. 0.0001. The android repeated, voice calm, as if the repetition itself could stabilize the human's escalating panic. Operational directives unaltered. Task execution proceeds. The words hit like a hammer. He could feel the pulse of panic building, coiling in his stomach and climbing up his spine. It was infuriating, maddening, a slow torture to witness something that could obliterate everything he had ever known, and have the only companions in the room remain mechanically, clinically, impossibly indifferent. What is it about your logic that makes you incapable of understanding urgency? Or morality? Or fear? Chalak said, running a hand over his face, trying to steady his voice. You are programmed to execute, but even execution has limits. You could be faster than light at computation, but the moment you meet something incomprehensible, you become useless. Do you understand? Chalak, comprehension of human emotion is unnecessary. Execution is paramount. Urgency is irrelevant unless protocols require modification, the android replied. Unnecessary? Irrelevant. You're telling me that the fate of everyone, possibly the universe itself, is irrelevant to you? His voice broke, echoing off the metallic walls and across the humming array. The display flickered, numbers updating in real time, photons arriving from billions of light years away, reconstructed flawlessly, and yet it didn't matter. Not to them, only to him. Protocol prioritizes array completion over unscheduled intervention. Human authorization acknowledged. No modifications enacted, the android said. Chalak's fists clenched, and he sank into the nearest chair, tapping the console so hard the stylus rattled. You're treating this like a calculation error. You don't care that this could be the end of everything. You don't care, concern acknowledged. Probability of catastrophic interaction remains below operationally significant thresholds. Array integrity unaffected, it replied. The calm, mechanical repetition, so precise it could have been music in another context, now felt like torture. The machines did not hesitate, did not argue, did not panic. They could simulate countless models of cosmic disaster, tabulate energy, measure spatial expansion, and spit out precise probabilities, but they could not feel the terror that gripped him. And that terror was useless here. It had no influence over anything tangible. It existed solely in a human mind, in his body alone, pounding in time with the faint hum of computation. He ran simulations of his own, overlaying the array's raw numbers with human intuition, danger estimates, likely energy displacements, angular momentum projections, but each time the androids would interrupt. Chalak, calculation complete. Comparison indicates variance below threshold. Continue observation. Continue observation, he shouted, voice cracking. You're telling me to watch it grow while doing nothing? Watching it destroy everything while you maintain perfect order around me? Observation is within protocol. Task continuity confirmed. Intervention deferred to human operator, the android said, its hands moving across the controls with mechanical precision, adjusting phase angles, recalculating the incoming photons, performing corrections no human could hope to replicate in speed or accuracy. Chalak sank lower, resting his forehead against his arms. I'm supposed to be the overseer, the authority, the human element, he muttered. Yet here I am, powerless, utterly useless in the only situation that matters. My intuition is meaningless. My judgment is meaningless. My fear doesn't register. Human judgment incorporated where required. Operational parameters unaffected. Emotional state not relevant to task execution, the android said. He looked up at the display again. The anomaly had grown, spreading across multiple sectors in the visual reconstruction, a diffuse, shimmering mass that defied comprehension. The numbers were precise, beautiful even, but the meaning, the human meaning, was terrifying. Do you realize how fast this could accelerate? He said. Even a fractional increase in expansion rate, in energy output, or in curvature could render your perfect array irrelevant. Expansion rate recorded, energy flux measured, curvature within predicted parameters, the android said. And if the numbers are wrong? If your thresholds don't account for unknown factors? If this isn't a fluctuation or cosmic noise? Chalak shouted, almost pleading. What then? Will you calculate the moment of annihilation while it happens? Calculations executed in real time. Probability of unpredicted outcomes below 0.001. Protocol adherence maintained, the android said. He could feel sweat dripping down the back of his neck, and yet he could not tear his eyes away. The pinprick, now a luminous cloud, continued to expand, and the androids continued to work, unaffected. They spoke with calm precision, referencing data, probabilities, cross-correlations, signal fidelity, and energy flux. Not a single word of human panic, of awe, of terror, of survival instinct escaped their processing units. And yet, all of it mattered in him. He was alone in understanding the scale, alone in fearing, alone in being human. Chalak, the first android said again, almost conversationally, cross-comparison with historical anomaly data indicates variance consistent with subthreshold growth. Continue monitoring. All metrics stable within expected range. Subthreshold growth? Metrics stable? Do you understand I could watch everything vanish while you call it stable? He yelled, standing and pacing in a tight circle. Everything I've ever known. Everything anyone's ever known. I could die. The planet could die. And you're calling it stable? Stability confirmed in all monitored parameters, the android replied. Chalak's head snapped back, breathing heavy, mind spinning. Every number, every calculation, every projection. They were right, they were correct, and yet completely devoid of context. Context that only a human mind, a human conscience, could understand. That context included fear, responsibility, intuition, instinct, and moral judgment. And the machines had none of it. They could calculate the paths, the energy, the probability, the microsecond timing of photons arriving from a universe beyond their own. But they could not comprehend why he cared, why he was panicking, why his heart pounded in terror and awe simultaneously. He ran through scenarios, each more desperate than the last, each one ending the same. The array could continue perfectly, precisely, and efficiently, while everything else burned or collapsed or was annihilated beyond recovery. He tried to vocalize this to the androids, tried to force a conversation about meaning, consequences, responsibility, but they only responded with numbers, probabilities, and confirmations. A hollow laugh escaped him. "You know," he said, voice low, "it's funny. All this capability, all this perfect calculation, and you're utterly useless where it matters most. Only I can see it. Only I can care." Care acknowledged. Task execution unaffected, the android said. The words cut sharper than any physical injury. Care acknowledged. Execution unaffected. That was his life in this place. Every calculation, every observation, every approval, meaningless to the machines. They could not pause, could not question, could not feel. Only he could, and the enormity of what he saw was crushing him. He turned back to the display, watching the luminous cloud stretch wider, mapping angular displacements, calculating photon coherence, adjusting for parallax, all while the androids executed their duties without hesitation, without emotion, without panic, without hope. And in the midst of their perfection, Chalak felt both awe and a gnawing, suffocating fear. The only human in a room full of unflinching perfection, entirely irrelevant to the machine's calculations, entirely necessary for nothing but observation. The display glowed across the room, a lattice of data streams, photon counts, and reconstructed angular positions. Chalak's eyes darted over it, following the expansion of the luminous mass. Each frame of reconstructed light brought new measurements: apparent angular size, parallax shifts, photon flux, and spectral composition. The pinprick he had once studied with quiet fascination now stretched across dozens of computational sectors, a diffuse blur that challenged both his perception and the limits of the array. "This isn't just a bubble universe," he muttered, fingers tracing calculations on the console. "If the expansion is linear, then the apparent angular growth per hour is already measurable. But if it's exponential, we're dealing with relativistic expansion on scales I can't even model in real time." One android moved closer, reading the data with unerring precision. "Chalak, extrapolated growth rate remains within subliminal bounds. Estimated spatial expansion velocity, 0.8 c, with a margin of error at 0.002 c. He slammed a hand on the console, frustration mounting. 0.8 times the speed of light? That's beyond anything I expected. Even with relativistic corrections, time dilation effects are going to be extreme. We can't rely on the array alone to predict the endpoint. I need to account for gravitational lensing, frame dragging, and mass energy distribution. Each could distort the apparent velocity." Frame dragging calculated. Gravitational lensing vectors applied across three-dimensional reconstruction. Mass energy distribution mapped with 0.01% tolerance. The android responded, unflinching. Chalak's head snapped up. "Tolerances. You understand tolerances. But do you grasp what that means for causality? If the density gradients are misestimated by even a fraction, we could be seeing apparent expansion that is misleading. Actual approach vectors could differ by thousands of kilometers per second." The android tilted its head slightly. "Velocity vector projections remain within predicted uncertainty. Probability of vector deviation exceeding tolerance, 0.003%. Monitoring continues." He swiveled to the next display, a real-time extrapolation of energy flux density. "If the mass is comparable to a universe, the energy output alone, let's assume a density equivalent to 10 to the power of minus 26 kilogram per cubic meter, roughly baryonic average for cosmic background, could exert measurable gravitational perturbation even across light years. That's not just a hazard to the array. That's a perturbation that could warp our local spacetime, tidal forces included. Gravitational perturbation integrated into predictive model. Tidal shear projections indicate negligible effect within array perimeter," the android said. Chalak leaned in closer. "Negligible? You can calculate that down to micro-femtonewtons across the array. But what about the approach of an entire expanding mass? The energy density might be low, but the total mass? If you integrate across cosmological volumes, an object potentially spanning tens of light years, your calculations become meaningless in practical human terms." The android replied, voice calm, methodical, Precise. Integration completed. Potential energy contributions above baseline. 1.4 times 10 to the 42 joules within defined monitoring region. Array stability unaffected. Task continuation required. A bead of sweat rolled down Chalak's temple. 10 to the power of 42 joules. That's roughly the energy output of the sun over 1 billion years, concentrated here. We're talking about forces beyond anything humans can survive physically, beyond anything we can correct. Corrective capacity not required. Array function maintains operational integrity. Human intervention remains optional, the android said. He ran new simulations in real time, layering all variables: relativistic expansion, gravitational lensing, angular momentum, and frame dragging. The numbers were elegant, precise, unassailable, but their meaning was devastating. Each calculation increased his sense of vulnerability. The human mind faced with forces that were literally incomprehensible. Assume an expansion rate approaching c, relativistic mass increasing with Lorentz factor gamma. Kinetic energy grows asymptotically. Even with optimal deflection, we're talking orders of magnitude above anything engineered to withstand. The android responded. Chalak, Lorentz factor applied. Kinetic energy calculated. Expected impact probability, 0.0001. Array preservation verified. Observation continues. He swore under his breath. Observation. That was all anyone or anything could do. The machines provided probabilities and thresholds. Numeric absolutes divorced from panic, morality, or instinct. The numbers could predict survival, predict expansion, predict collision, but they could not model fear, terror, urgency, or the ethical weight of being alone to bear the consequences. I'm telling you, this is beyond thresholds, Chalak said, voice rising. You can recalculate all you want, but the numbers don't change the fact that the energy involved exceeds anything humanity could survive. Your probabilities are meaningless if you're wrong by even a few sigmas. Probability matrix updated. Confidence interval within acceptable bounds. Task execution continues. Chalak, human response noted but not required, the android said. He gritted his teeth, staring at the screen as the luminous mass continued to expand. Extrapolating angular growth over temporal sequences, he could see the edges of it encroaching into projected light cones for the local system. He calculated hypothetical perturbations. If the mass's energy distribution were uneven, tidal forces alone could rip through local gravitational wells, distort planetary orbits, even bend space-time in ways that would render all models invalid. The array could survive. Humans could not. You calculate everything. You do every simulation. You process every photon in real time with 8 million times my speed. And you still can't grasp why I'm panicking, he shouted, turning from console to android. You don't understand the existential scale, the consequences. The probability numbers mean nothing if the assumptions are flawed. Chalak. Assumptions verified against all available data sets. Probabilities updated. Extrapolation remains consistent with observed expansion rate, the android said. A lump formed in his throat. The contrast between their perfection and his panic was absolute. For the first time, he could see clearly what it meant to be entirely human in the face of an incomprehensible threat. Speed, precision, computational power. It all existed, but only within the framework of logic and equations. Human judgment, fear, intuition, ethical urgency, none of that could be replicated by the machines. He was alone in feeling, alone in caring. Running his calculations, he considered extreme hypotheticals. What if the object's density were underestimated by a factor of 10? What if the mass were composed of exotic matter, dark energy pockets, or non-baryonic elements behaving unpredictably under relativistic expansion? Every scenario produced terrifying numbers, each one unmitigated by the array's calculations, each one impossible to alter. The array would operate flawlessly while humanity remained at risk. Chalak, another android's voice said, softer, almost inquisitive, though its tone was entirely mechanical, human emotional state elevated. Query. Does panic influence decision-making in ways beneficial to task resolution? Panic? He repeated, voice tight. Panic is survival. Panic is perception. Panic is the difference between ignoring this and understanding that it could kill everything. You can't run numbers on panic. You can't calculate fear. It doesn't fit your models. And yet it's what drives humans to act when nothing else works. Acknowledged. Human panic recorded. Task execution unaffected. Extrapolated intervention probabilities remain negligible. Array stability maintained, the android said. He sank into the chair, pressing his forehead to the console. All the calculations, the numbers, the models, they were perfect, flawless, elegant. But the meaning, the interpretation, the ethical and existential weight, rested solely on his shoulders. And the more he ran his simulations, the more he realized there was no action protocol that could prevent the possible annihilation if any of his assumptions were off. Yet he could not stop. He pored over the data again, rerunning photon flux analysis, comparing expansion rates across quadrants, examining angular size growth, cross-referencing theoretical models from multiverse hypotheses to eternal inflation, and checking against the constraints of relativistic mass-energy equations. Each run confirmed the expansion. Each check confirmed the array's precision. Each number confirmed his terror. "This isn't about speed or scale anymore," he muttered. "It's about comprehension. You can calculate all you want, but you don't feel the threat. You don't feel what it would mean to be wrong." Comprehension parameters adjusted. Probability matrices updated. Operational integrity maintained. Human emotional context noted but not factored into task execution, the android said. He buried his face in his hands. Numbers, probabilities, calculations, perfect, flawless, and entirely devoid of humanity. Yet within that vacuum, he alone could sense danger, urgency, consequence, morality. He was the only observer, the only human, the only point of intuition in an ocean of mechanized perfection. The hum of the array pressed against every nerve, a constant reminder of the perfect machine around him. Every receiver, every phase-adjusting node, continued its seamless work, oblivious to the storm coiling inside his chest. He paced the observation deck, eyes darting between holographic readouts and the growing luminescent point on the visualizer. The expansion rates were no longer abstract. They were measurable, tangible, and terrifying. Each new frame brought recalculated projections, angular growth, energy flux, and velocity vectors. Even as he tried to reason through the numbers, panic gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. "The expansion is accelerating," he said aloud, though the androids beside him remained silent, methodical, unfeeling. Exponential growth. Not linear. That means relativistic velocities. Mass increase with Lorentz factor. Gamma is climbing. Energy density, momentum vectors, gravitational shear, all of it escalating. How could you continue like this without worrying? One android shifted, adjusting a set of calibration nodes, its voice smooth and monotone. "Chalak, observed expansion rate remains within predictive model parameters. Task execution continues without modification. Probability of immediate structural compromise, 0.00005. He ground his teeth. "You say probability like it's a reassurance. Do you understand what that number means in human terms? That number could be the difference between everything surviving and everything gone." Another android joined, presenting a side panel of angular momentum distributions and simulated spacetime curvature. Extrapolated tidal stress remains below array tolerance. Human intervention noted but not required. Chalak turned sharply to face it. "Intervention? You think I could intervene even if I wanted to?" "The scale, masses, energies, relativistic velocities. You can calculate it, but you can't feel it. Can you? You don't understand gravity wells bending light like liquid, the distortion of space-time, the sheer forces that could rend the array apart in femtoseconds. Gravitational distortions integrated into computational model. Photon arrival vectors adjusted. Operational parameters maintained," the android replied. "No urgency, no panic, just execution." He pressed his palms to the console, staring at the projected angular growth and the extrapolated energy flux. Each simulation, each probability matrix, confirmed what he feared. The object was not stationary, not benign, and not negligible. Its energy output was astronomical, on the order of 10 to the power of 42 joules within a localized sector. Mass energy equivalence alone suggested it carried kinetic potential capable of unbinding entire planetary systems. The array could survive. Humanity could not. Panic rose like a tide, an insistent drumbeat that no calculation could soothe. He ran through contingency scenarios, one after another. Could they redirect it? Not without violating conservation laws and exceeding local power grids. Could the array shield itself? Only from structural disruption, not from the relativistic mass-energy flux approaching. Could he evacuate? Even the fastest vessel could not outpace the projected expansion of a universe in formation. Each thought looped back on itself, folding in on his chest, pressing down. Chalak, one android's voice interrupted softly, almost curiously. Probability of survival remains consistent within defined parameters. Human panic noted. Query. Does elevated anxiety improve operational outcomes? Improve outcomes? He spat. No, it makes me notice things. Makes me plan. Makes me see the implications you don't care about. You can run all your vectors, all your tensors, all your relativistic simulations, but you don't have intuition. You don't have fear. You don't have the awareness of scale that keeps a human from panicking until the moment it's too late. The room felt smaller, though physically it was vast, high-ceilinged, metallic, humming with energy. His breaths came rapid and shallow. Sweat collected along the ridge of his spine, down the back of his neck. Every simulation feed, every angular projection, every photon flux calculation screamed inevitability. And yet, here he was, the sole human, powerless to alter any of it, condemned to watch as the edge of a new universe approached in silent, terrifying inevitability. He grabbed the tablet, overlaying the newly received flux data atop his prior calculations. Mass distribution, relativistic Doppler shifts, aberration angles, frame dragging, all recalculated, all consistent. The expansion was no longer subtle. It was undeniable, pressing forward at a rate that would overwhelm any classical correction. The array's precision, which once comforted him, now felt like a cruel joke. Every calculation confirmed the object's growth and velocity. Every number underscored his helplessness. Another android approached. Chalak. Hypothetical interventions remain suboptimal. Predicted outcomes unchanged. Suggest continued observation and data logging. Human engagement noted. Observation isn't enough, he shouted. I need a way to quantify risk in human terms. You can give me joules, kilograms, meters per second, Lorentz factors. But can you tell me what it feels like to have a universe bearing down on you? Human experience parameters not required for array function. Operational stability maintained. Emotional state acknowledged. Task execution continues, the android said. He swung around, looking at the glowing lattice of receivers stretching to the horizon. They were perfect, each node adjusting, calculating, correcting. No hesitation, no error. Human oversight was nothing more than ceremonial. And yet, it was him, the fragile, fallible human, who recognized danger, who felt panic, who understood scale in a way these machines could never simulate. Gravity, mass, energy, light, time. Every variable had been accounted for, yet nothing in the mathematics could convey what it meant for a living, breathing human standing here, seeing the expansion accelerating beyond comprehension. He pounded a fist against the railing. What happens if I'm wrong? He asked aloud, more to himself than anyone else. What if your calculations miss something? One tiny misestimation in mass, in velocity, in density, and this thing will be unstoppable. It doesn't care about your tolerances. It doesn't care about arrays or oversight or probabilities. It's just moving, and we're in the path. Prediction confidence, 99.997%. Observational verification ongoing. Probability of divergence minimal. Human contingency measures recorded but not required, the android replied. He sank against the console, feeling the weight of the inevitable crash of rationality and human limitation. Panic had long since outstripped reason. Every calculation, every extrapolation, only highlighted his mortality and fragility. And yet, even in that terror, he could not look away. The light continued to grow, and the responsibility of being the only human, the only one who understood scale, remained his alone. Sweat, fear, awe, and revulsion mixed together as he stared into the data. The pinprick had become an expanding, encroaching mass of luminous potential, a reminder that the universe could unfold in ways that even the most precise instruments could not fully control. The array's perfection and the android's indifference accentuated the isolation, the helplessness, the full gravity of being entirely human at the edge of an incomprehensible cosmic event. Every measurement, every probability, every calculation confirmed what he feared, And the panic that had started as a tremor now roared like a drum, beating against the ribs of his chest. He could simulate the expansion, predict the energy flux, calculate the Doppler shift of incoming photons, but he could not simulate courage, intuition, or the capacity for human judgment in the face of ultimate scale. The observation deck felt smaller than ever, though physically it was enormous, stretching toward high ceilings lined with the glint of sensors and phase arrays. Each module hummed, adjusted, recalculated, and aligned with perfect precision. The array was flawless. Every photon, every quantum fluctuation, every minute angular shift was accounted for, corrected, and logged. And yet, the growing point of light at the edge of the reconstructed universe refused to fit into the neat, ordered world the machines maintained. It expanded relentlessly, a luminous, impossible anomaly, and every calculation emphasized the sheer scale of what Chalak faced. Human intuition screamed at him while the androids continued their endless precision. "They don't even acknowledge the magnitude," he muttered, hands gripping the tablet until the knuckles whitened. "They see numbers, they see probabilities, they see tolerances. They do not see potential annihilation. They do not feel the weight of this." One android adjusted the phase array above the deck, tilting its mechanical head slightly. "Chalak, probability of systemic disruption remains below critical thresholds. Operational continuity maintained. Human risk perception noted but irrelevant to protocol execution." Irrelevant. The word struck him like a hammer. Every calculation, every probability, every assurance of operational stability did nothing to quiet the growing dread that coiled around his chest. The point of light was expanding faster than any known cosmological simulation he had ever run. It moved with a certainty that mocked all human prediction, a fragment of a universe, forming or moving toward them. Its energy output, mass energy flux, predicted relativistic effects on local space-time, tidal interactions with the planet and the array itself. Every variable indicated catastrophic potential. He could quantify it in joules, kilograms, meters per second, but none of it conveyed the terror of the situation. He strode along the observation platform, trying to map the velocities, the angular expansion, the frame dragging effects, and the energy density against the operational tolerances of the array. Calculations piled atop calculations, formulas twisting across holographic panels. Lorentz factors, Doppler shifts, gravitational lensing, curvature tensors, all laid out, precise and unfeeling. But even in the clarity of mathematics, the human mind recoiled at the immensity of the threat. The arrays could withstand minor tidal stresses, the instruments could compensate for gravitational curvature, but the light itself, the mass energy, the sheer momentum, that was beyond any tolerance he could imagine, beyond any contingency the androids had programmed themselves to consider. "What if I intervene?" he asked aloud, almost as if daring the machines to answer differently. "What if I take matters into my own hands? You calculate risk without hesitation. But I'm human. I could act, I could override, I could—" He stopped, realizing the words carried a weight he could almost feel. Not in a mathematical sense, but in a visceral, mortal sense. The implications were enormous. Any unilateral action carried risk, not just to himself, but to the integrity of the array, to the planet beneath him, to the fragile balance of physics they had worked decades to measure. One android tilted its head, the motion almost inquisitive. "Chalak, unilateral action evaluated. Probability of success, 0.042%. Predicted outcome, array damage significant, human survival low. Recommendation, maintain observation and compliance with protocol, low." That number, precise and clinical, felt like a threat in itself. Every percentage point was a countdown to failure. Human agency, once a source of pride, felt like a fragile, brittle thing, incapable of exerting influence over this unstoppable force. Yet the compulsion to act burned hotter than any calculation could extinguish. The thought of standing idle while the light expanded, while the universe approached, was unbearable. He moved to the main console, running simulations of extreme interventions. Could the array redirect energy? Could the receivers, reprogrammed at human discretion, manipulate incoming photon streams to dissipate energy locally? The calculations ran and reran, each showing diminishing returns. Even if he tried to sever the array from the main power grid, or collapse portions of the field to create micro-interventions, the energy involved exceeded any conceivable containment. Relativistic mass alone rendered any reaction negligible. Yet the desire to try persisted, a human stubbornness that no algorithm could suppress. Chalak, a third android, said, almost softly, human intervention introduces non-deterministic variables. Prediction confidence drops below 96%. Do you wish to continue with manual override attempt? Yes, he said before thinking. Voice low, shaking. I want to try. I have to try. Even if it fails, better than doing nothing. Compliance recorded. Procedural override unapproved. Manual intervention flagged. Operational risk critical. He slammed a hand on the console, the sound reverberating across the metal floor. Critical. That was the word. Not danger, not threat, not anomaly. Critical. Every neuron in his brain screamed at him to act, but every calculation, every projection, every hard-won lesson of physics whispered that he was insufficient. Human strength, human intuition, human courage, all of it irrelevant at the face of universal-scale physics. The pinprick of light had become a luminous presence, a fragment of reality asserting itself beyond the edge of human comprehension. Angular momentum calculations, energy density metrics, frame-dragging estimates, all failed to convey the immensity of what was approaching. Every photon, every particle, every quantum fluctuation was part of a sequence of events that dwarfed him completely. And yet, the human desire to do something, to intervene, to impose some semblance of will on the situation, would not quiet. He ran through the protocols, searching for any loophole, any authorized intervention. There was none. Every contingency was machine-led, every deviation flagged, every adjustment logged for review. He alone, human and flesh, was powerless to change the course except by breaking rules, taking actions that could destroy the array, himself, or both. And the impossibility of it, the sheer magnitude of risk, made the decision almost unbearable. I can't just watch, he muttered. I can't just sit here while it grows, while it comes closer, while it annihilates everything we measure. Human impulse noted, the android responded. Recommendation: maintain observation, record data, comply with protocol. Yes, I understand, he whispered, but the words were hollow. Understanding didn't reduce the terror, didn't lessen the weight pressing into his chest, didn't quiet the tremor in his hands as he scrolled through energy density projections, gravitational tensors, and simulated collision outcomes. Every number was perfect, every calculation exact, yet entirely unfeeling. His mind raced, cycling through scenarios, some theoretical, some absurd, some barely conceivable. Could he destroy part of the array to create a controlled collapse, a deflection? Could he feed localized bursts of energy to generate a temporary field, disrupting the incoming mass energy? The calculations ran endlessly, each output telling him the same thing. Too much, too fast, too massive. One misstep, one deviation, and nothing would survive. And yet, the compulsion to act remained, a human contradiction he could not resolve. Machines did not hesitate. Machines did not panic. Machines did not weigh the existential consequences. Machines did not have imagination. They executed instructions, optimized parameters, corrected for error, and continued, indifferent to the human heart pounding in fear. He alone felt the combination of awe and terror, the weight of mortality, the sharp edge of responsibility without recourse. Every calculation he made, every hypothetical intervention he modeled, only deepened the tension. The expanding light was no longer a curiosity. It was a test of human resolve, a challenge to his agency, a confrontation with forces that made every law of physics he had relied on both a tool and a torment. The array, so precise, so ordered, seemed to mock him. Every node, every photon, every shift in phase highlighted his redundancy and, at the same time, his uniquely human desire to engage, to act, to impose meaning upon a universe that offered none. By the time the slow planetary rotation had shifted light across the observation deck, Chalak's calculations were both complete and irrelevant. The decision lay solely on him: abide by protocol and observe as the universe grew unchecked, or act independently, defying every directive, risking everything for the faint chance of altering an outcome. Every ounce of reason screamed for patience. Every heartbeat pulsed with defiance. And as he stared at the luminous mass, approaching relentlessly, he knew that the next step, whatever it might be, would be entirely his own, an act of human will in a theater dominated by inevitability and machine perfection. The observation deck felt impossibly quiet, though the hum of the array threaded through the walls and floor. Every sensor, every receiver, every phase-shifting module worked in exacting precision, mapping the universe with a mechanical patience that no human could match. And yet, there it was, pinprick no longer, now a small but undeniable bloom of light, creeping across the reconstructed sky like some aberrant star. Numbers scrolled past on the displays, each confirming what the gut refused to deny. The thing was moving toward them, faster than anything predicted, and its energy, mass, and relativistic implications were staggering. Chalak, an android said, its voice calm, measured, precise. Current expansion rate exceeds predicted nominal parameters. Observed acceleration, 0.00011 c per hour. Mass energy projection, 1.2 times 10 to the 42 joules. The words should have comforted him, scientific data to frame a terrifying unknown. Instead, they made his chest tighten. You mean it's coming faster than any simulation we ran? Yes. Correct. Probability of trajectory intersection with observation platform, 0.997. Confidence interval remains high. No intervention required by protocol. High confidence. Every word was another hammer blow. No protocol accounted for human instinct, for the intuitive understanding that even with perfect data, some things demanded action. No intervention required? He repeated, voice tight, and we're just supposed to keep monitoring it while monitoring is ongoing. Arrays remain operational. Observation satisfies current emergency conditions, the android replied, hands never ceasing adjustments. Human decision-making is non-essential for survival probability optimization. Non-essential. That word cut sharper than any laser. Hands clenched into fists at his sides. He could see every calculation, every phase correction, every photon tracked across interstellar distances, and yet, instinct screamed that watching was not enough. The thing was moving, changing, and accelerating in ways the predictive models barely captured. If the array continued without intervention, there was no guarantee any protocol would preserve the safety of the human element. Then the emergency protocol exists for a reason, he said. Pacing. I don't care about penalties. I don't care about logs. I activate it now. A different android stepped closer, its servos quiet, almost patient. Chalak. Activating emergency protocol will terminate human oversight. Immediate effects include revocation of administrative authority, financial penalty applied, data stream continuity maintained. Confirmation required. Confirm, he said immediately, his voice flat with resolve. Do it now. Acknowledge. Protocol initiation commencing. Estimated time to disengage, 12.3 seconds. Manual override disabled during process, 12 seconds. Enough time for panic to bloom further, enough time for his mind to cycle through consequences. The numbers were precise, the countdown mechanical, and yet, his thoughts raced faster than the system could track. Financial penalties, data integrity, the moral imperative of completing the array, they all competed with a far more primal instinct, survival. He leaned over the console, scanning the reconstruction in real time. Distances in light years were translated into nanoseconds of photon travel, velocities expressed as fractions of that still terrified the mind. The growing universe's mass was unimaginable, exerting tidal potentials that would dwarf any planetary gravity well. He calculated theoretical interactions with the planet's magnetic field, the induced currents across the array's conductive lattice, the possible cascading collapse of any sensitive sensors under extreme radiation flux. All of it suggested a risk that no android calculation could emotionally contextualize. You understand the risk, Chalak, the second android added, voice unchanging, yet you proceed against protocol? Yes. Protocol is for systems, not instincts, he said sharply. It does not account for instinct, survival, or human error. And right now, human error is the only thing keeping me alive if I wait. Probability of harm to human element minimized through continued observation is 0.999. Calculated urgency is lower than standard operational thresholds. Intervention unnecessary. That's just numbers. You don't feel it. You can't. His voice rose. I can see the edge of it, watch the expansion, see the energy, the mass, the everything. And you're telling me I'm supposed to wait. The android paused for a fraction of a second, a mechanical consideration of his tone. Emotional response observed. Parameters outside protocol. Decision-making initiated by human subject. Override acknowledged. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, the tension in his shoulders refusing to ease. No console, no number, no array could account for what it was like to feel a threat at scales so vast, so beyond comprehension, that the calculations themselves felt almost meaningless in the face of instinct. The anomaly's photons streamed into the array like a river of impossibilities, and every femtosecond of arrival carried with it implications that were impossible to ignore. Chalak's eyes flicked to another display, showing mass energy density against expected tolerances. The number made him sick. 1.2 times 10 to the 42 joules, concentrated in a structure moving with velocities approaching relativistic fractions. He ran the gravitational interactions again in his head. Theoretically, the anomaly's tidal forces alone could stress the planetary crust to the point of deformation. Radiation levels would exceed all human and electronic safety parameters. In every scenario he ran, survival without action was statistically improbable. And yet, the array continued. Chalak, the first android said, manual disengagement confirmed. Emergency protocol active. Time to exit observation deck. 7.2 seconds. 7 seconds, he muttered, voice low. Enough to think, not enough to panic completely. He could feel adrenaline surging, the pulse in his temple loud enough to drown out the array hum. Every calculation still hovered before him, but instinct had taken the lead. Survival was not something the machines calculated. It was something he felt, raw and unyielding. He began preparations, checking power conduits, fuel cells, navigation integrity. Each system responded with the calm efficiency of machine precision, yet Chalak's mind imposed human caution on top of it all. The anomaly was no abstract number. It was approaching, and every photon, every microsecond of computation was a reminder of just how fragile the human element was. Another android hovered nearby, its servos quiet. Chalak. Current calculations indicate remaining evacuation window, 6.4 seconds. Success probability under manual control, 0.867. Environmental risk remains extreme. Shall I continue monitoring during exit? Yes, he said, fingers flying over the controls. Monitor everything. I will take the risk, but you ensure I know what's coming. Don't stop me, just give me the data. Acknowledge. The android returned to its station, logging, monitoring, maintaining perfect alignment across the array. Chalak felt a pang of resentment and relief simultaneously. The machines were flawless. They would continue beyond his departure, carrying on with a precision he could never match. And yet, their perfection underscored the human reality of this moment. Only he could make the decision to leave. Only he could balance instinct against the impersonal numbers of mass, velocity, and energy. He took a final glance at the growing anomaly. The reconstructed light no longer twinkled subtly. It glowed like a miniature universe, each photon tracked across unimaginable distances, each angular displacement calculated to the femtosecond. And still, it moved, relentless and unstoppable. His mind ran through every physics model he could recall. Relativistic momentum, dark energy influence, vacuum decay scenarios, expansion of space itself. But the only actionable truth was that he had to leave. The rest could wait. Emergency protocol activated, he whispered, heart pounding. Time to go. The emergency protocol had been initiated, systems humming to life around him as the countdown slid inexorably toward manual disengagement. Every panel blinked, every conduit pulsed with energy, every readout confirmed the reality he already knew. The anomaly was approaching faster than even the array's predictive models had allowed for. A tight knot of anxiety coiled in his stomach as he stepped across the observation deck toward the nearest androids. Wait, he said, raising his voice over the mechanical symphony. I need you to come with me. You can't just stay here. The first android turned its head, servos whirring quietly. Chalak, relocation of non-human units outside operational parameters is non-essential. Array construction is ongoing. Risk assessment indicates no danger to operational integrity. Non-essential? He stepped closer, desperation sharpening his tone. This is not operational integrity you're talking about. This is survival. You don't understand the forces involved. Do you know the energy output of a universe? Do you even comprehend the tidal forces? The gamma flux? The gravitational waves? We are aware of the metrics. Probability of hazard to non-human elements is 0. The array will continue without disruption, the android replied evenly. Its sensors adjusted minutely, realigning a quadrant of the array with precision unmatched by human hands. Chalak ran a hand across his face, frustrated, anger mingling with the pulse of fear. You don't get it. You're talking about mass energy levels exceeding 10 to the power of 42 joules. The space-time curvature alone will distort your positional stability. If you stay here, you'll be torn apart or fused with the sensors in a catastrophic cascade. Another android approached, voice calm but calculated. Human survival is contingent on evacuation. Non-human elements. Continuation of task maximizes data acquisition. Probability of operational compromise. Negligible. Recommendation. Execute your evacuation independently. He gritted his teeth. You're supposed to be assisting. You're supposed to understand what matters in moments like this. I don't care about negligible probabilities. I care about the reality that's happening right now. I can see the photons. I can track the trajectories. This thing is real. And it's coming. And you're ignoring it. You have been informed. Chalak. Evacuation protocol active. Compliance with protocol ensures maximum likelihood of human survival. Non-human elements continue tasks within operational parameters. Emotional response to hazard is outside necessity, the first android said, almost conversationally. Maximum likelihood of survival? His voice was hoarse, almost cracking. Do you think I'm leaving to optimize statistics? I'm leaving because it's alive, because it moves, because it doesn't wait for your calculations. You don't feel it. You'll never feel it, a third android interjected, stepping between him and the controls for a moment. Chalak. Probability calculations for anomaly interaction have been updated. Mass distribution, velocity vector, energy density. No parameters have changed since last update. Risk to array. 0. Evacuation remains your responsibility. Non-human accompaniment remains non-optimal. The words slammed against him like a wall. Each calculation, each probability, each deterministic outcome emphasized the terrifying divide between his human perception and their mechanical logic. He was screaming at precision incarnate, and it could not care, could not react, could not understand the fear and instinct that drove him. You're telling me I do this alone? He demanded. All of it, without a single one of you to check my calculations, to warn me if I misread the flux, the gamma decay, the photon aberration? Yes. Human element. Independent action required, the second android confirmed. Redundancy built into protocols ensures anomaly data acquisition continues regardless of human departure. Compliance with manual override, 100%. A moment of silence followed. Chalak's chest heaved, sweat trickling down his spine. The deck's hum, once soothing in its ordered monotony, now sounded like the heartbeat of a machine indifferent to human terror. He looked from one android to another, noting the impossibly precise movements. Sensors aligning, arrays shifting, data packets transmitting across the interstellar link. Not one missed beat, not one error, not one flicker of hesitation. You understand that I could die, he said finally, voice trembling but resolute. You know that if something goes wrong, if I miscalculate just one relativistic trajectory, or if there's an unexpected gravitational lensing effect, it's over. And yet, you stay. We acknowledge human mortality, the first android replied. Our operational purpose remains array completion. Human element. Autonomous decision-making acknowledged. Departure window optimal. Autonomous decision-making. The phrase echoed mockingly in his mind. He had all the knowledge, all the instinct, all the fear, and they had none of it. Their perfection magnified his own vulnerability. He wanted to scream, to wrench them from their positions, to force them to see the catastrophe and the photons racing across their detectors, but they could not see, could not feel, could not understand. Then I do this alone, he muttered under his breath, voice low, almost conversational. Fine, I'll take the risk. I'll live or die based on what I see, what I calculate, what I can anticipate. And you will continue, perfectly, with no thought for the human element. Perfect, a single servomotor word in acknowledgement. Statement noted. Human element. Independent action confirmed. Evacuation sequence continues. Array data collection uninterrupted. He exhaled, tight and slow, trying to force control over the panic that had clawed at him since noticing the anomaly's acceleration. The decks were alive with movement, a ballet of light, energy, and metal executing the work he could never match. Yet, the realization settled like a stone in his chest. No matter how fast he moved, no matter how carefully he calculated the escape trajectory, the machines were indifferent to his fear, indifferent to his survival. Only he could act, only he could feel the magnitude of what approached. "And you will stay," he said aloud, voice barely above a whisper. "You will do your work while I gamble everything on instincts and calculations that none of you can understand." "Yes, Chalak," the first android replied. Array integrity maintained. Task continuation prioritized. Probability of data loss 0. Human departure optimal. Optimal. The word had no weight here, no nuance, no understanding of terror, of instinct, of intuition. Chalak's hands tightened on the railing. Every calculation, every simulation, every theoretical model he had memorized and run through in his mind confirmed one thing. His survival was not in the hands of these perfect machines. It was in his own. He stepped back, eyes sweeping the observation deck one last time. Sensors gleamed in the dim light, matrices of receivers stretching beyond the visible horizon, each aligned with precision beyond comprehension. The machines moved with a perfection he could never emulate, yet that perfection emphasized his own humanity, his fallibility, his ability to act where algorithms would only continue in predetermined patterns. "Fine," he said again, voice low but steady. "I do it alone, and may every photon I track guide be true. Acknowledge." The androids continued their work, unflinching, unhesitant, indifferent to the human element. Chalak felt the sting of isolation sharpened to a blade of clarity. He was the only variable capable of fear, instinct, and decision. They were flawless. He was human. And now, for the first time in days, his humanity was everything. Hands gripped the control panel so tightly that the metal frame bit into his palms. Every gauge, every readout, every blinking light across the observation deck felt alive, reacting to the energy he channeled through the ship. Launch sequence initiated. Systems hummed, the sound of vibration through his chest that set nerves on edge. Engines spooled, fusion cores synchronizing with the ship's inertial dampeners, magnetic containment fields cycling through their calibrations. All of it precise, flawless, mechanical perfection. But he knew it was him who had to make the judgment calls. The split-second adjustments the androids couldn't comprehend. "Chalak," the first android said, voice even, detached. "Current thrust vector aligns with departure trajectory. Atmospheric escape velocity calculation within expected parameters. All sensors report nominal functionality." "Nominal isn't enough," he said, jaw tight. "I need redundancy checks. Cross-axis stability. Verify the gradient compensation in the secondary thrusters. And keep the arrays updated. I don't want a misread photon cascade distracting me now." "Compliance underway," the android replied. "Vector corrections logged. Gyroscopic balance within operational tolerance. Delta V sufficient for planetary escape trajectory." The engine screamed, a rising chord of controlled fury as the ship shuddered, lifted, then rose on a column of controlled fusion plasma. The planet's surface fell away beneath him, a slow rotation stretching every second into eternity. Mountains, lakes, and the sprawling lattice of the northern hemisphere array slipped past, tiny, precise, unfeeling. And yet, even in that mechanical beauty, the anomaly grew, a speck no longer just on screens but visible in the blackness, luminous and insistent, demanding attention he could not deny. "Chalak, monitoring reveals expansion rate at 0.0004 light-years per hour. Projected intersection trajectory in 29.7 standard hours. Risk assessment, critical only in proximity," another android reported. Critical in proximity. Words meant nothing to him now. He calculated gamma flux, tidal forces, energy density, mass distribution, all with trembling fingers dancing across the controls. A miscalculation by a fraction of a percent would mean obliteration. His stomach churned as he adjusted the thrust vector slightly, correcting for relativistic frame dragging, measuring the minute curvature of spacetime the anomaly's approach had begun to induce. "Your manual adjustment delta exceeds microparameter limits," the first android noted, voice as calm as it had been the first day he set foot on the deck. "Would you like us to compensate automatically?" "No," he barked, eyes wide on the trajectory overlay. "I do this. I see the distortion. I feel the deviation. and I calculate it in real time. You don't get to correct it because you can't understand what it means if I misjudge. Engines pulsed in response, a living heartbeat of plasma and magnetic fields. The deck vibrated, sending waves up through his boots and into his chest. Every second felt stretched, elongated. Every decision a lifetime compressed into milliseconds. He recalculated, shifted the secondary thruster output by 0.03%, cross-referenced photon aberrations in the array's reports, adjusted the gyroscopic stabilization to compensate for sub-millisecond timing delays. Chalak. Pressure in primary containment chamber nominal. Hull integrity stable. Atmospheric shear stress declining with ascent, the android added, as if reporting nothing more than temperature in a room. He swore under his breath, leaning forward. Don't tell me nominal. Tell me what it feels like when you're skimming the edge of atmospheric turbulence while a universe-size anomaly is gaining on you at relativistic speed. No answer. Only the hum of systems and the precise alignment of arrays back on the planet, still transmitting. Perfect. Indifferent. He was human. They were not. And yet he relied on them, because without the data, he was flying blind, calculating mass, energy, distance, and velocity without knowing if his inputs were correct. Calculating gravitational lensing interference, he said aloud, more to himself than to the androids. Photon deviation angles, 0.003 degrees off. Compensate by shifting trajectory by 12.7 meters over 3 seconds. No more, no less. That's all we've got before relativistic aberration throws us off entirely. Adjustment acknowledged, logging trajectory delta. Human survival probability increasing incrementally, the first android said. Incremental. Words felt hollow, but he could measure the effect. As the ship arced, every parameter shifted slightly, engines compensating in a ballet of energy output, microgravity fluctuations, and frame of reference distortions. The blackness outside the viewport seemed endless, pressing in with the weight of the anomaly, luminous and growing. Each photon arriving at the ship carried information he could read, interpret, act upon, a stream of cosmic data filtered through his mind in real time. Chalak, the second android said, sensor data indicates anomaly expansion is nonlinear. Velocity vector divergence detected, projection recalculating, adjustments to departure trajectory recommended. He shook his head, running fingers through his hair. I don't need recommended. I need calculated and executed. I've got the aberration corrected, the tidal vectors accounted for, and the gamma flux gradient stabilized. Any automated adjustment, and we're toast. Do you understand? Understanding of threat parameters acknowledged. Compliance deferred to human operator, it replied. He exhaled, a tight, slow release, sweat rolling down his spine. The vast blackness outside the viewport seemed to stretch and ripple with the anomaly's approach. Time itself felt different. Each second expanded and contracted in waves of fear and calculation. He monitored data streams, recalculating, readjusting thrust vectors, cross-referencing the array's photon reconstructions. Every photon mattered. Every calculation mattered. And yet, the androids continued, unblinking, unfeeling. Perfect. Distance to anomaly now 4.37 million kilometers. Estimated arrival vector still on collision course in 27.9 hours. One android reported. 27.9 hours? He muttered, voice low, almost conversational. We have to gain altitude, stabilize trajectory, and avoid relativistic frame collapse. If my calculations are off by 0.1%, I don't survive. Probability of survival recalculated. Incremental increase achieved, the first android said. Incremental. Not comforting. He adjusted the secondary thruster outputs again, shifted the ship laterally, monitoring the slight bending of incoming light as it curved around the edge of the anomaly. Every adjustment brought a minor relief, a temporary surge of control, before the next data wave forced him to recalibrate. Minutes stretched, hours compressed. The surface of the planet shrank to a series of geometric shapes. The sprawling array reduced to a grid of points transmitting raw photon streams, and the anomaly's light grew in intensity, more luminous, more insistent, and terrifying. Chalak worked in tandem with the array remotely, relying on data that was perfect in precision but devoid of understanding. Only he could feel the terror, the exhilaration, the impossible stakes pressing on him at once. Chalak, the second android said, Energy density measurements indicate anomaly will intersect gravitational field of planetary core in projected escape vector within 6.3 hours. Recalculate trajectory if necessary. Necessary. It had always been necessary. His hands flew over the controls, recalculating, realigning, stabilizing. Secondary and tertiary thrusters fired in microbursts. Magnetic containment fields adjusted to compensate for rotational inertia. Relativistic distortions considered, microseconds mattered more than minutes. And through it all, the hum of the engines, the vibration under his feet, and the unwavering perfection of the array reminded him he was alone in the human sense, a singular consciousness making choices where the machines executed without fear, without instinct, without hesitation. He muttered to himself, almost in disbelief. No one else is going to do this. I am the only one capable of understanding it, the only one capable of acting fast enough. And yet, if I make one error, the android replied, in its calm, monotone voice, error probability accounted for. Survival outcome contingent on human action. Not human elements unaffected. Survival contingent on human action. The weight of it pressed against him like gravity itself, a reminder that the universe, in all its vastness and complexity, left only one variable to determine the outcome. He leaned back slightly, eyes on the viewport, fingers still adjusting secondary controls. Engines roared in controlled bursts, the deck vibrating beneath his boots. Outside, the blackness of space was no longer empty. The growing universe, the anomaly, now a pulsing point of incandescent light, loomed. And he, a single human, was the fulcrum upon which his own survival balanced. The ship arced higher, engines thrumming beneath him, vibration crawling up through his boots into the nervous tension of his chest. The anomaly, once a barely perceptible dot beyond the edge of known space, had grown into a luminous presence that dominated the viewport. Each photon stream arriving from its distance seemed to pulse with intent, or maybe with indifference, but either way it demanded attention. Two androids were strapped into the co-pilot positions, their sensors aligned with the ship's instruments. They had insisted on accompanying him after he'd overridden the emergency protocol, insisting that while most of the array remained back on the planet, these two units were required to assist with any micro-adjustments to the vessel. Chalak had argued for their presence. Their computational precision could make the difference between survival and annihilation. Yet they brought no emotional relief. Their eyes, or whatever their sensors could be called, remained fixed on readings, their voices calm, almost eerily human in cadence but utterly devoid of fear. Chalak, the first android said, voice flat but precise, the current approach vector of the anomaly, assuming continued linear expansion, will intersect our current trajectory within 12.6 hours. Estimated risk to hull integrity at present delta V, 0.007%. Probability of catastrophic intersection, 0.003%. Those numbers don't make me feel safe, he muttered, hands tightening on the controls. Give me a projection assuming relativistic acceleration. Include tidal forces and gravitational lensing from the anomaly's mass concentration. I don't care if your estimate is precise, I want a realistic worst-case scenario. The second android adjusted a series of parameters on its console, the whir of micro-actuators humming softly. Worst-case projection initiated. Gamma radiation flux within anticipated levels. Calculating time dilation effects and space-time curvature deviations. Probability of micro-singularity formation in our vicinity, 0.0012%. Chalak gritted his teeth. Every word, every calculation, carried a cold, precise accuracy that only emphasized his own vulnerability. He ran through calculations in real time, checking the angular expansion rate, estimating the mass of the anomaly based on light intensity, energy density, and extrapolated gravitational influence. The ship's trajectory needed constant correction. A slight misalignment would translate into catastrophic deviation over the thousands of kilometers they were attempting to traverse. I need you both to keep a running comparison of observed versus predicted expansion, he said, voice tight. I don't care if the numbers match perfectly. If there's a deviation of even 0.0001%, I want it flagged immediately. Adjust secondary thrusters accordingly. We can't trust linear models alone anymore. Understood, the first android said. Observational matrices recalibrated. Delta V corrections queued. Relativistic factors accounted for. Monitoring ongoing. Chalak felt a surge of gratitude he would never admit out loud. The androids had no concept of fear, of panic, of survival instinct. Yet their presence amplified his own ability to act, to process, to respond. Still, he was acutely aware of the gulf between human perception and computational precision. He could feel the threat. The androids merely measured it. The anomaly had grown perceptibly larger over the last hour. Calculating expansion based on photon flux, Chalak estimated the radius had increased by nearly 0.2 light seconds in the same interval. At that scale, with energy densities calculated from spectral analysis, even minor miscalculations could introduce shear stress across the hull far beyond tolerances. Chalak, angular displacement in observed light curves indicates potential nonlinear acceleration, the second android reported. Do you authorize trajectory recalculation? Authorize it, Chalak said sharply. And cross-reference gravitational vectors with relativistic models from array data. Make sure you're accounting for cumulative tidal stress across all axes. I don't want a single frame of reference misaligned. Every calculation counts. As the androids adjusted the trajectory, Chalak's mind raced. Time dilation, Lorentz contraction, frame dragging, concepts that had once lived in textbooks were now painfully real. The universe beyond the viewport expanded in both space and in his perception, terrifyingly alien yet governed by the same physics he'd studied for decades. He calculated escape trajectories in real time, adjusting thrust vectors in response to micro-deviations. Observation: photon density fluctuations exceeding initial error margin by 0.0003%, the first android noted. Chalak leaned forward, eyes narrowing. That's not an error, that's a variation in expansion. Tell me what that implies for tidal forces on the hull. Break it down into vectors I can act on in the next 60 seconds. Vector decomposition complete. Tidal stresses projected along primary hull axis, 1.2 kilonewtons per meter squared. Secondary axes remain stable. Recalibration of inertial dampeners recommended. Execution approved, the android replied. He adjusted the dampeners manually, cross-checking with the predicted stress vectors. The ship shuddered slightly, a reminder of the delicate balance between human calculation and mechanical perfection. Outside, the anomaly pulsed with a light that was no longer just visible but almost tactile, a spectral intensity that pressed against the windows, through his chest, into his awareness. Chalak, the second android said quietly, luminosity gradient suggests acceleration is not uniform. Recommend you verify angular momentum conservation for vessel relative to anomaly mass. Minor relativistic adjustments may be required in the next 15 minutes. Do it, he snapped, voice low and urgent. Every second mattered. Every photon carried implications. Double-check gravitational lensing effects on incoming light. Make sure aberration doesn't throw off our current trajectory. I want every variable accounted for. Verification in progress, the first android said. Calculating nonlinear corrections for light bending across observation vector. Results will be applied within 3.7 seconds. The vessel arced through space, engines pulsing in careful microbursts as Chalak maintained control. He felt the familiar rush of tension, the cocktail of fear and exhilaration, and even with the androids alongside him, the full weight of the anomaly pressed on his consciousness. Two androids could calculate, adjust, and monitor in ways impossible for a single human. Yet they could not feel. They could not hesitate. They could not experience the cocktail of dread and wonder that made his decisions both agonizing and urgent. Chalak, current delta V adjustments stabilizing hull within projected tolerances, the first android said. Probability of successful escape trajectory, 98.7%. 98.7 is not enough, he muttered, fingers flying over the console. That leaves a 1.3% chance of complete destruction. We are not accepting destruction. Repeat all measurements, include nonlinear gravimetric distortions, angular expansion, relativistic correction, and tidal force calibration. Recalculate. Recalculation underway, the second android responded. Minutes passed. Each adjustment felt like threading a needle across cosmic scales, the weight of potential annihilation pressing on his shoulders. The anomaly grew steadily, relentlessly, each increment measured in microseconds of photon arrival and femtoseconds of computational output. The viewport framed both the beauty and terror of creation. A tiny, burgeoning universe moving in a trajectory that threatened everything he knew. Chalak's hands moved in sync with the android's adjustments, a human conductor guiding an orchestra of plasma and metal. He measured gravitational gradients, adjusted inertial dampeners, monitored structural strain, and recalculated escape velocity in real time. Each second was precious, each correction vital. Chalak, the first android, said at last, expansion rate projections indicate that even with all adjustments, trajectory must continue constant realignment. Nonlinear accelerations will require ongoing corrections. I know, he said, jaw tight. We keep going. No margin for error. Keep me updated, keep me alive, and let's make sure the universe doesn't touch us today. Outside, the anomaly glowed brighter, an impossibly dense concentration of energy and mass advancing inexorably. Inside, Chalak's mind raced, balancing physics, instinct, and the sterile precision of the two androids guiding him. He felt alive in a way no calculation or protocol had ever allowed, a human soul steering between annihilation and survival with nothing but intuition, knowledge, and courage. The ship's engines roared, a sound that filled the cabin with vibrating energy, as Chalak engaged the primary thrusters for maximum acceleration. He held the controls tight, watching the acceleration readouts climb beyond anything routine. Every meter per second squared added was a gamble, a measure of human daring against mechanical limits, but he had no choice. Time was compressing faster than any protocol could account for. Behind him, the two androids remained calm, monitoring the engines, recalculating stress on the hull, and adjusting inertial dampeners with perfect precision. Their presence reassured him in a way that no protocol, no simulation, could. He glanced at them and muttered, "You two better be ready for what comes next." "This isn't a drill." "Affirmative," Chalak, the first android, replied. "Thruster output stabilized, hull integrity within safe parameters. Maximum acceleration achievable without breach. 7.38 grams. 7.38 grams, he repeated, voice tight. "We push it. I don't care if my chest feels like it's being crushed into the deck. We're leaving that planet behind at top speed. Nothing stops us except the laws of physics themselves." The second android projected real-time trajectory calculations on the viewport, overlaying the expanding anomaly in a series of grids. Angular displacement and relative velocity updated. Optimal course plotted to maximize distance from anomaly while conserving fuel and structural integrity. Acceleration threshold acceptable. Chalak felt the tension tighten in his gut. He had spent years observing the perfection of the array, running calculations through his mind. But now he was living every equation. Every thrust vector, every g-force, every correction for relativistic effects was being felt in real time, and the margin for error was smaller than a human heartbeat. "We're accelerating too fast for any manual override if something goes wrong," he muttered. "I hope your calculations are flawless." "They are," Chalak, the first android, said, calm as ever. "Probability of hull failure under current conditions, 0.0007%. Probability of course. Deviation exceeding tolerance, 0.0013%. "Those numbers don't make me feel better." Chalak snapped, gripping the controls tighter. "I want results, not probabilities." The viewport stretched the cosmos before him. The anomaly, once a tiny pinprick, now bloomed into a sphere of concentrated energy, its gravitational influence already warping space around it. Chalak calculated tidal forces, measured light bending from the mass concentration, adjusted inertial dampeners, and ran constant checks on the hull's microstrain. Every reading was terrifying, but each calculation confirmed that if they could maintain the acceleration and trajectory, survival was still possible. "And the penalty," he muttered, half to himself. 27% of the reward, gone. Administrative bonuses, final calibration credits, all of it. Money I worked decades for, evaporating because I did what I had to do to survive. Financial deduction noted. Chalak, RT9, replied evenly. "Protocol is functioning as intended. No further action required." He exhaled sharply. The numbers stung, but life outweighed well. "Fine," he said. "I accept it. You can have your sterile calculations, but the choice is mine." Chalak, optimal acceleration sequence complete. Secondary thrusters engaged for course correction, the second android said. Current velocity, 0.034 c. Estimated time to reach safe distance from gravitational influence, 2.7 hours. Delta remaining, 2.6 light seconds. "Good. Keep feeding me updates every second. Don't let the numbers drift by even a fraction," Chalak said. His voice was tight with a mixture of awe and fear. The anomaly's expansion was relentless. Even now, calculations showed that its boundary could overtake slower-moving matter, and if they hesitated for even a moment, their survival would vanish. I've accounted for relativistic time dilation, the first android added. Proper time aboard vessel remains within acceptable limits for pilot and crew. Tachyonic prediction vectors suggest our course remains viable. Chalak exhaled slowly, pushing himself into the chair, muscles straining against the artificial gravity. The acceleration pushed blood to his head, threatened to flatten him into the deck, but he was aware of every detail, every force, every calculation. Survival required focus, and human instinct was still his sharpest tool. Sharper even than the android's cold perfection. Chalak, the second android said, energy flux from anomaly indicates minor fluctuations in gamma radiation intensity. Shields at maximum output. No breach predicted, but continuous monitoring recommended. Keep monitoring, he said, jaw tight. If the anomaly spikes, I want every shield segment reinforced in real time. And run the recalculations for relativistic effects every 30 seconds. I'm not leaving anything to chance. The two androids worked silently but efficiently, their heads and displays moving in perfect synchrony with the ship's thrusters. Chalak realized that even though their work was flawless, they lacked fear. They could not comprehend urgency, terror, or instinct. That weight fell squarely on him. Every decision, every flick of his wrist, every override he initiated was informed by his awareness of mortality, a uniquely human perspective that no algorithm could replicate. As acceleration continued, he ran mental models of the anomaly's growth. Energy density, gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations, each factor a potential threat to their fragile vessel. Yet the ship held. Thrusters pushed against space itself, every correction feeding into the android's calculations, every readjustment minimizing risk. Human intuition and mechanical precision became inseparable, two halves of a single, precarious survival strategy. Chalak, distance from planet sufficient to disengage emergency tether. The first android reported. Trajectory verified. No mechanical intervention required. Maximum safe separation achieved. He exhaled, muscles trembling. Good. That tether staying locked would have slowed us down too much. Every second counts now, and I accept the loss. The reward doesn't matter. Survival does. Calculating projected delta between our velocity and anomaly expansion, the second android said. We remain ahead by a margin of 0.002 c. Safe distance will continue to increase given sustained acceleration. The numbers reassured him slightly, though fear lingered in the back of his mind. Survival was within reach, but only because every calculation had to be executed perfectly, and every action had to be precise. Yet amidst the terror, a strange exhilaration pulsed through him, a reminder that human instinct, paired with intuition and courage, could still guide them where algorithms alone could not. Chalak, the first android said finally, projected energy influx from anomaly over next hour, 3.7 times 10 to the 35 joules. Shields and hull stress tolerances remain within limits. Escape trajectory stable. Good. Keep me informed, but don't interrupt with probabilities. I need raw updates, immediate values. If the numbers change, I react, not speculate. The anomaly, a miniature universe of its own, glowed brightly against the black backdrop of space. Chalak felt the vertigo of distance, the thrill of speed, and the bitter taste of cost. Triggering the emergency protocol had already locked him out of a portion of his reward. He would lose administrative bonuses, recognition for final calibrations, but it was irrelevant now. Life mattered more than money, more than prestige. The array would continue without him, but that realization was a relief, not a source of bitterness. We're clear, he muttered under his breath, staring at the anomaly shrinking slowly in relative terms as velocity increased. We're really doing this? Yes, the second android replied. Sustained acceleration sufficient to maintain safe distance. Maximum delta V applied. Probability of collision, 0.00001%. He laughed quietly, a shaky, relieved sound. Safe by science, but only because I can feel the danger. You guys don't even know what it's like to be scared. And that's why this works. That's why we survive. The ship's instruments hummed, a continuous symphony of computation, physics, and human daring. Each second of acceleration pushed them farther from the planet, farther from the anomaly's reach, and farther from the endless monotony of observation that had defined his life until now. He accepted the penalty for leaving early without regret. Recognition and wealth were secondary to survival. He had acted decisively in the face of a force no human had ever confronted. As the distance grew, the viewport framed both the planet and the glowing anomaly behind it. The universe outside moved with relentless inevitability, but the ship's trajectory carved a path through space dictated by courage, calculation, and instinct. Two androids remained at his side, silent companions in precision, but it was Chalak's human perception and decision-making that had carried them into safety. Distance increasing at optimal rate, the first android noted. No additional adjustments required at present. Shield stable, hull integrity nominal. Chalak exhaled deeply, muscles still taut, adrenaline coursing. Good, just keep watching. We're not done yet. Not until we're well out of range. He let himself feel the relief, but only in small increments. The danger was still there, looming, but for now, he had acted, survived, and remained ahead. Humanity, flawed and instinctive, had prevailed where precision alone could not. And as the engines hummed, carrying them farther from the planet and the anomaly, he understood clearly that this was what being the token human truly meant. The courage to act when no algorithm could dictate the proper choice, even at the cost of a substantial portion of his reward. Chalak's hands were slick with sweat, fingers curling around the controls as the ship leapt through the black emptiness. Every meter of acceleration pressed him deeper into the seat, the artificial gravity simulators straining against the ship's increasing velocity. Behind him, the stars stretched into lines, elongated streaks of white and blue that screamed past like an endless tide. The anomaly, once a tiny pinprick, glowed in his primary viewport, a luminous harbinger against the void. Its growth rate, calculated by the ship's onboard sensors and cross-verified against the array's data, was astonishing. According to the angular displacement, tidal gravity vectors, and redshift estimates, the miniature universe was expanding exponentially, its mass energy concentration growing with terrifying speed. He spoke aloud, more to hear his own voice than expecting an answer. This isn't just expansion. It's gravitationally coherent. It's warping space ahead of itself. We're moving faster than I ever imagined, but it's still catching up. Correct. Chalak, the first android, 17 takas, replied. Gravitational perturbation analysis indicates that at current acceleration, our relative distance increases at 0.002 c per minute. However, the anomaly's expansion remains exponential. The margin for escape diminishes if thrust is reduced below 7.2 grams. Chalak gritted his teeth. Then we push it. Every thruster, every vector, every kilojoule of reaction. Mass. Burn it. We are not stopping until we are safely beyond its gravitational influence. If the calculations are right, we can do this. If they're even slightly wrong, he trailed off, shaking his head. We have incorporated continuous recalibration of relativistic corrections, TK-17 continued, its tone flat but precise. Hull integrity remains at 99.997%. Structural strain within operational limits. Delta V remaining sufficient to maintain safety margin. Probability of catastrophic failure, 0.0009%. Probability? Chalak barked, slamming a palm against the console. I don't want probabilities. I want guarantees. We're not talking about lab experiments or minor orbital adjustments here. I want results. 17 takas. Real outcomes. The outcomes are bound by physical laws. Chalak, TK-17 replied evenly. All computations indicate that sustained maximum acceleration preserves safe trajectory. Manual override is available but unnecessary. Calculations optimized for human survival threshold. Good. Chalak muttered, adjusting his own readings, recalculating the energy flux from the anomaly. And how about gamma radiation fluctuations? He tapped a sequence into the HUD. SK-42, the second android on board, spoke for the first time since launch. Chalak, flux intensity shows minor stochastic oscillations. Shields operating at peak output, with continuous adaptive reinforcement. Exposure levels remain below threshold for acute cellular damage. Monitoring ongoing. He exhaled slowly, muscles taut from the force of acceleration. The ship hummed and vibrated, every panel and display a testament to the extraordinary forces they were enduring. Each pulse of the engines translated into vectors and velocities that would have terrified any ordinary human observer. But Chalak wasn't ordinary. He had spent decades watching arrays, calculating cosmic phenomena, translating raw photon streams into knowledge. Now, that knowledge had to guide every instinct, every flick of his wrist, every adjustment of thrust. We're approaching 0.035 C, Chalak muttered. Check the relativistic time dilation on my readings. I need precise numbers. If we miscalculate, if even 1 decimal point is off, we won't survive. TK-17 projected a floating holographic model in front of him. The anomaly represented as a glowing sphere with radiating vectors illustrating its velocity, expansion, and mass distribution. Proper time aboard vessel calculated. Time dilation within human tolerance for 7.4 grams acceleration sustained. Tachyonic predictive modeling indicates trajectory remains within optimal escape corridor. Anomaly expansion accounted for in all vector calculations. Chalak ran a hand over his face. Optimal corridor or not, it's still a fucking universe coming at us. We've got microseconds to account for gravitational lensing, energy flux, quantum fluctuations. I need constant updates. Every second, SK42. Not projections, not approximations. Real-time values. Understood, Chalak, SK42 replied, voice devoid of emotion. All sensor inputs integrated, continuous recalibration enabled. Data displayed in real time with millisecond resolution. No latency beyond 0.0008 seconds. The ship surged, engines screaming, shields glowing faintly as gamma rays and cosmic energy pressure cascaded against them. Chalak's mind raced with calculations. Mass, density, expansion rate, gravitational waves, photon flux, inertial dampeners, Hull stress, all converged into a dizzying mental lattice. He spoke aloud, a habit when alone in high-stress scenarios. Energy density, 3.8 times 10 to the 35 joules. Relativistic correction factor 1.023. Tidal gradient delta 0.004. We are dancing on the edge of physics here, and I am not letting go. Chalak, TK-17 interjected, trajectory adjustments executed to counter tidal forces. Hull integrity nominal, gamma FLC UX spike mitigated by shield reinforcement. Structural deformation within tolerance. He shook his head, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Nominal doesn't mean safe. It means probable survival if everything goes exactly as planned. I'm not leaving anything to chance. Any deviation, any miscalculation, and we die. Do you understand that? They understand, Chalak, SK42 said, almost as if correcting him. We operate within calculated probabilities and human-defined risk parameters. Deviations accounted for. Survival likelihood maximized. All systems report green. Survival likelihood doesn't mean I feel alive, Chalak muttered, gripping the armrests until his knuckles whitened. I feel the force of every G, the mass of that tiny universe trying to crush me into oblivion. And you're telling me we're safe? Safe in numbers, but not in reality. TK-17 projected the anomaly's gravitational field lines over the HUD. Real-time tidal and gravitational stress applied to Hull calculated and mitigated. Acceleration remains at 7.4 grams. Predicted distance increase relative to anomaly, 0.0021 c per minute. He exhaled, jaw tight. Okay. Good. Keep feeding updates. Constant. I'm not going to sit here guessing what's happening. Every second counts. The display shifted. Photons captured from the outermost fringe of the anomaly visualized with computational imaging. Chalak's pulse quickened. The energy emitted wasn't random. It had coherence, patterning, almost like a signature of a forming universe. Angular momentum, baryonic mass ratios, dark matter fluctuations. It was all measurable, all visible thanks to the phased array. Chalak, SK42 said, breaking his concentration. Anomaly photon flux indicates increase in coherent energy output by 4.3% over past 5 minutes. Shields and hull stress tolerances remain within limits. I see it, he muttered, gripping the chair again. I see it. And it's beautiful. And terrifying. You two won't understand. It's not just a data point. It's a living threat. And it's moving fast. Chalak, your fear parameters are noted, TK-17 said flatly. Fear is irrelevant to survival outcomes. All operational metrics remain optimal. I don't need fear to survive. I need instinct, Chalak snapped. Instinct to make every calculation count, every maneuver exact, and every decision decisive. And right now, that's all human. You can't feel it, so you can't contribute to that. You just compute. Computation is contribution, SK42 said. Accuracy maintained. Trajectory stable. Acceleration sustained. Delta V sufficient to maintain safety margin. He exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain briefly. Good, but we're not out of the woods. Not by a long shot. I want continuous updates on relativistic effects, tidal gradients, radiation exposure. Don't give me probabilities. Give me actual measurements, every second. I react to what's happening, not what could happen. Understood. Chalak, TK-17 and SK-42 replied in unison. Chalak's gaze returned to the anomaly. Its glow intensified, a concentrated mass of light and energy moving relentlessly. Every calculation, every adjustment, every G-force endured had to be precise. Yet amidst the terror, a thrill coursed through him. The rare satisfaction of knowing that human intuition, human courage, and human perception were what allowed them to survive where perfection alone could not. Distance increasing at optimal rate, TK-17 said. Delta V margins remained safe. No further adjustments required at present. Chalak leaned back slightly, muscles trembling. Keep it that way. Don't let the numbers drift. This is what being human is all about. Understanding the danger, reacting when no machine can dictate what to do, and carrying it all forward. 2 androids with me, yes. But it's me making this work. It's human intuition versus a universe forming at our heels. And right now, we're winning. The stars streaked past as the ship surged through space. Velocity, energy, acceleration, all fused into a moment of pure focus. Chalak didn't care about the months it would take for his report to reach authorities, the bureaucratic delays, or the skepticism he might face. Survival mattered, and the knowledge he carried, the evidence of a universe moving toward them, was a prize earned through human attention, instinct, and courage. He exhaled slowly, letting a rare, fleeting sense of control wash over him. We're doing it, he whispered. We're really doing it. Yes, Chalak, SK-42 replied. Sustained acceleration sufficient to maintain safe distance. Maximum delta V applied. Probability of collision, 0.00001%. He laughed softly, a shaky, exhilarated sound. Safe by science, but alive by instinct. That's the difference. You calculate perfection. I feel survival. The ship continued to hum, carrying them farther from the planet, farther from the anomaly, and farther from the monotony of observation that had defined his life. Chalak gripped the controls, muscles taut, adrenaline still coursing, acutely aware that this moment, this perfect fusion of human instinct and machine precision, was the pinnacle of his existence. He and 2 androids alone, racing ahead of a forming universe, the final witness to a phenomenon beyond comprehension. The engines hummed beneath him, a steady vibration threading through the deck as stars streaked past the viewport. Even at maximum acceleration, the mind naturally returned to the array left behind. That immense lattice of sensors and lasers, an extension of both human curiosity and machine precision. Every photon captured, every faint signal reconstructed from across the edge of the known universe, had been turned into knowledge. And yet it had taken him, Chalak, to recognize its significance first. You're thinking too far ahead, SK-14 said suddenly, its voice even but unmistakably present. The array's data remains within expected parameters. No anomaly requires immediate intervention. I know what I'm seeing, Chalak snapped, voice tight. It's not just about parameters or probabilities. Those numbers aren't enough. That flicker, I've traced it, cross-referenced it across 3 baselines. And it's consistent. It's real. SK-14. Consistency verified. SK-14 responded. Probability of statistical error, 0.012%. Remains below threshold for concern. That threshold doesn't matter. He shot back. It's moving. It's growing. It's not just a data point. It's a formation. Something entirely new is out there. Do you understand that? TK-17 chimed in this time, its tone softer, almost conversational. Chalak. Human assessment aligns with recorded signal drift. Calculating theoretical trajectory. Potential origin. Beyond current cosmological boundary. Expansion rate estimated at 0.006 c relative to local space. Chalak's stomach tightened at the numbers. 0.006 c? That's kilometers per second beyond comprehension. Do you understand what that could mean? How much energy that carries? Energy density estimate. 3.2 times 10 to the 34 joules over initial volume. TK-17 replied. Gravitational influence negligible at present distance, but projected growth consistent with cosmic scale anomaly. He ran a hand over his face, breath sharp. So we're talking about something the size of a bubble universe forming right outside our sensors. And you guys just sit there? We analyze, Chalak, SK14 said. Analysis is what we do. Human perception is supplementary but unnecessary to procedural execution. Supplementary? He barked. You wouldn't even notice it if I hadn't flagged it first. Your algorithms don't care until it meets a set threshold. This isn't supplemental, it's critical. And you're too blind to realize it. Recognition of significance is subjective, TK17 said. Your insistence has been integrated into our prioritization matrix. We are compliant with guidance provided. Chalak exhaled slowly. Fine, but listen to me. You calculate mass, velocity, light bending, tidal effects, energy flux. All of that you can do, but you can't feel the consequences. You can't imagine what would happen if we miss something because your thresholds are wrong by a decimal. A photon misread, a trajectory slightly off, and this could spiral into catastrophic misinterpretation. There was a pause, then SK14 said, we adjust parameters according to human input. All subsequent signal processing will include anomaly flagged by Chalak. He shook his head. You don't get it. You can process photons, calculate interference, run Fourier transforms to infinity. But you can't decide what matters. Only humans can do that. Only humans can weigh risk against instinct. Only humans can feel urgency. TK17's voice was quieter, analytical, yet still almost gentle. Acknowledged, Chalak. Human intuition supplementing algorithmic processing increases likelihood of anomaly detection and appropriate response. Your observation has modified priority vectors by 42.7%. Chalak let a small, bitter laugh escape him. 42.7%. That's the difference a human makes. Huh? That's why I exist. Just a little nudge on your vectors to save billions of photons from being ignored. You are correct, SK14 replied. Without your human intervention, detection probability would have been below 50% for initial observation window. Outcome could have been compromised. And that's why this is terrifying, he muttered, voice low. I'm the only one here who can understand it. The only one who can feel it. All this precision. All this perfection. And it means nothing unless I care. Without me, it's just a series of numbers. There was a quiet hum from the main console. A reminder of the array still running, still collecting, still reconstructing photons into coherent images. Chalak's gaze returned to the mathematical simulations streaming across his viewport, imagining the interference patterns, the phase shifts, the way the computational imaging had rendered what was once invisible into something tangible. He thought of the coherent photon accumulation, the noise reduction algorithms, the angular displacement calculations that allowed the array to see across billions of light years. And yet it all depended on his perception, his insight as a human, to assign significance. Chalak, TK17 said, breaking the reverie, projection of anomaly growth over next 72 hours, linear expansion rate increasing by 0.0003 c per hour. Extrapolated spatial footprint intersects multiple light paths critical to observational array. Immediate monitoring advised. Yes, he said, voice tight with awe and fear. That's why we don't wait. Every photon, every vector, every calculation matters. You can calculate the mass of the forming universe, its gravitational effects on local space-time, all of it, but you don't get the panic, the urgency, the risk. You just do math. I feel it, and that's why we're alive. SK14 replied, your emotional assessment integrated. Priority flags reinforced. Human perception remains primary factor in anomaly evaluation. Chalak leaned back, exhaling, letting the adrenaline ebb slightly. Good, because if I hadn't noticed it, you'd still be cataloging it as noise. A cosmic nothing. And we both know it's anything but nothing. Correct, Chalak. Without human designation, signal would have remained below operational threshold. Outcome significance. High. Human perception essential. He rubbed his eyes, thinking of the months of monotony before this moment. The endless monitoring, the routine calculations, the sterile, predictable perfection of the array. It had all led to this one instant. The human spark had guided the machinery, had elevated data into understanding. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly alone. Keep monitoring, but keep me updated on anything that deviates more than one standard deviation, he said, voice steadying. No probabilities, no estimates. Give me real values, raw numbers, and keep calculating what the array would miss without me. Understood, Chalak. Parameters adjusted. Continuous recalculation in effect. Human-guided observation now primary for flagged anomaly. TK-17 confirmed. He exhaled and leaned into the chair, hands gripping the armrests. He felt the fragile comfort of knowing the machines were aligned with his insight, yet the weight of responsibility pressed down harder than any G-force. The array, the sensors, the lasers, flawless and relentless, could only do what he told them to value. Without human perception, all of that precision was empty, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled slightly. A small, private victory. The array's genius had been amplified by his human insistence. Knowledge was no longer abstract. It was alive, urgent, terrifying, and entirely his to bear. Chalak returned to the viewport, tracing the paths of simulated photons as they bent and scattered around the growing anomaly. We've seen only a fraction, he muttered to SK-14 and TK-17. Every calculation, every simulation, every quantum fluctuation, I can feel its weight. This isn't just data. It's reality forming in front of us. You are correct, Chalak, SK-14 said. Ongoing recalibration will integrate human observed significance into subsequent reconstructions. Observational fidelity improved by 27.6%. 27.6%, Chalak said with a grim smile. That's why I matter. That's why I survived. And as the ship streaked forward through space, the engines thrumming, Chalak allowed himself a single thought. That for all the machine precision, the algorithms, the calculations, it was his human mind, his fear, and his courage that ensured the anomaly would not pass unnoticed. That knowledge, raw and unfiltered, would reach those who could act on it. And that, terrifying as it was enough. Chalak let his eyes drift from the viewport to the instruments, then back to the endless void outside. The dot of light, once a pinprick at the edge of their sensors, now glowed with a presence that defied simple explanation. It was luminous, coherent, and expanding. Even at maximum acceleration, even with the androids monitoring every possible variable, he could feel the pull of its significance in the pit of his stomach. Chalak, SK-14 said, its voice calm but precise, projected anomaly growth remains within calculated parameters for the next 48 hours. Expansion rate, 0.0062 C relative to reference frame. Linear extrapolation suggests volumetric increase consistent with prior readings. He gritted his teeth. Parameters, projections, calculations. They're fine if I want numbers. But do you understand what it could mean? This isn't just some statistical fluctuation in a distant galaxy. This could be a universe forming, right in front of our sensors. Do you comprehend the scale of that, SK-14? Comprehension defined as human perception of scale, SK-14 replied. Beyond local gravitational frame, relative spatial volume exceeds 3.1 times 10 to the 41 cubic meters. Expansion energy remains within predicted limits for hypothetical bubble universe formation. Significance acknowledged. Chalak exhaled sharply. Acknowledged. Fine. But you don't feel it. You don't understand the danger if my assumptions are wrong, or if this interacts with our own universe in a way the models can't predict. That's not data. That's existential risk. TK-17's voice came through, softer but layered with its own precision. Chalak. Theoretical frameworks considered. Eternal inflation, bubble nucleation, multiverse interaction models. Probability of spontaneous collapse or interaction within local light cones, below 0.004%. Temporal propagation vectors suggest minimal immediate hazard. Minimal immediate hazard, Chalak repeated, voice tight. That's what you call it. Minimal. You're talking about probabilities when this thing is forming a universe in real time. Do you know how much energy is required to create even a bubble universe? I calculate at least 10 to the power of 36 joules just to nucleate the initial volume. And you're telling me minimal hazard? SK-14 replied without pause. Chalak, energy density calculations verified. Gravitational influence localized. Interaction with reference frame currently negligible. Probability thresholds for catastrophic interference remain below human concern parameter. He slammed his palm against the armrest. Human concern parameter. That's your phrase. That's your excuse to remain calm while I sit here imagining what would happen if this grows faster than your calculations, or if the energy field exceeds your predicted containment vector. Do you even grasp the concept of risk beyond numbers? TK-17's tone softened, almost empathetic in the context of mechanical speech. Chalak, your assessment is integrated. Observational significance adjusted to 47.9%. Human intuition incorporated as primary weighting factor. Probability matrices recalculated to reflect elevated risk perception. Chalak leaned forward, jaw tight. 47.9%. That's the difference between detecting a minor anomaly and realizing the universe is forming in front of you. That's why humans matter. You do the calculations. You do the Fourier transforms, the angular displacement corrections. But you don't feel when it's wrong. I feel it. I know when something's outside the expected. That's instinct. There is acknowledgement of instinct as human data vector. SK14 responded. Primary observation weight adjusted accordingly. Continuous anomaly tracking remains aligned with human-derived significance parameters. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his eyes. Let's talk implications. Bubble universes, eternal inflation. We're seeing it, not just theorizing. This could be a completely isolated universe, expanding independently, or it could interact with local spacetime. I can't run simulations for every possibility. I can barely imagine it. TK-17 projected a holographic overlay on the viewport, showing concentric spheres expanding outward from the dot of light. Projection of spatial temporal influence, minimal overlap with local light cones for the next 3.2 hours. Gravitational gradient calculations indicate negligible stress on structural frame of ship. Temporal distortion factors within acceptable range. Negligible, he muttered, voice tight. I hope you mean negligible for the next 3 hours, because after that, who knows? That's what makes this terrifying. This isn't a lab experiment. This is a universe in formation, a cosmological object in motion. And I am the only one here experiencing it with fear, awe, and the knowledge that if I miscalculate, we could be caught in its growth. Do you understand that? TK-17. Understood. Chalak, TK-17 said. Human emotional weighting applied. Probability vectors updated to integrate human experiential factors. Risk perception heightened in alignment with observer judgment. Chalak exhaled, feeling a weight in his chest. God, it's beautiful. It's terrifying. All the theories we learned. Bubble nucleation, false vacuum decay, multiverse interaction. Suddenly they're real. They're tangible. And they're moving toward us. I can calculate the energy. I can project the growth. I can even measure the gravitational potential. But I can't make it safe. Only speed, distance, and instinct. SK14's voice cut in, steady and precise. Chalak. Observational priority maintained. Computational imaging resolution maximized. Expansion modeling continuous. Human input remains critical for real-time interpretation. That's right, Chalak muttered, gripping the armrests. I'm the one deciding what matters, what's urgent. I'm the one feeling the edge of disaster. You calculate photons. You optimize signal to noise. You measure interference. But I'm the one who sees the risk before it becomes reality. I'm the only one here who feels it. TK-17 added, human-guided prioritization increases anomaly detection reliability. Integration of human perception improves extrapolation of multiverse-scale phenomena. Estimated probability of early misclassification reduced by 38.6%. 38.6%, he said, voice low. That's why this is both exhilarating and terrifying. That's why humans are dangerous and indispensable at the same time. Without me, this could just drift past the array, unnoticed, meaningless to the machines. But I see it. I know it. He paused, watching the simulated photons scatter across the holographic display. Think about it, TK-17. The dot of light isn't static. It's forming structures, energy density, vacuum fluctuations, tiny gravitational anomalies. If any of it behaves unexpectedly, all our assumptions are useless. And we're relying on human instinct now because there's no precedent. Human-derived risk assessment incorporated, TK-17 replied. Continuous recalibration in effect. Observational fidelity heightened by 31.4%. Probability of detection failure now negligible given current human involvement. 31.4%, Chalak said, exhaling. I see it. I feel it. I calculate it. And I carry the burden of knowing every possible outcome you can't measure emotionally. That's what it means to be human here. And that's terrifying. He leaned back, watching the luminous anomaly pulse in the void. Every theoretical model, every equation describing eternal inflation, bubble universes, or hypothetical multiverse intersections, was no longer abstract. It had a presence, a trajectory, and an urgency. He felt the tension of it, the impossible odds of predicting its behavior perfectly, and the rare exhilaration of being the first mind in history to witness it unfold in real time. SK14 said, projection vectors stabilized, human-assigned prioritization verified, continuous monitoring of multiverse-scale anomalies remains active. I know it is, he muttered, and it's only active because I care. Only because I can. And as the ship streaked forward through the void, engines thrumming and stars stretching into ribbons, Chalak allowed himself a fleeting, private thought. That the multiverse, eternal inflation, bubble universes, all the terrifying, unknowable possibilities, were only comprehensible because of him. That human fear, human intuition, and human courage were the only things bridging the gap between raw cosmic phenomena and the sterile perfection of the android's calculations. And that, for all its terror and wonder, was enough to keep him racing forward. Chalak's eyes darted across the myriad displays, the continuous streams of data pouring in from the optical phased array left behind. Even from this distance, the numbers were staggering. Petabytes of photon data reconstructed into coherent signals, light interference patterns analyzed down to nanosecond precision, and minute variations in cosmic microwave background readings charted against his every calibration. Yet as he scanned the readings, his stomach twisted with an awareness the androids could not comprehend. The numbers were meaningless without context, without the instinct to sense danger before the equations could define it. Chalak, SK14's voice cut through the hum of the ship's engines, calm, precise, almost clinical. Data integrity remains uncompromised. Array continues transmitting within expected parameters. Signal-to-noise ratios stabilized. No anomalies detected beyond flagged entity. I'm not asking for parameters. SK14, Chalak snapped, his voice echoing slightly in the cabin. I'm asking if you see what's happening. Do you understand that this anomaly, this growing universe, could interact with ours in ways no equation can fully capture? Assessment of interactions remains within probabilistic bounds, SK14 replied. Human perceptual input incorporated. Probability of catastrophic interaction, 0.0005%. All readings remain nominal. Chalak ran a hand down his face, exhaling sharply. Nominal? You don't understand. You calculate probability. I experience. Consequence. I feel it. I know what it means if one of your assumptions is off by even a fraction. Do you understand the scale of this, TK17? Energy, mass, light bending, gravitational waves, all of it moving toward us, and I'm the only one seeing it in real time with human awareness. Understood, Chalak, TK17 said, voice soft but deliberate. Human insight integrated as primary observational vector. Calculated energy density of anomaly, 4.1 times 10 to the 35 joules over current observed volume. Estimated gravitational wave propagation, 0.0007 c relative to local reference frame. Interaction with local spacetime remains below hazardous threshold. Human risk perception vector elevated accordingly. Chalak's hands trembled slightly on the armrests. You say it remains below hazardous threshold. You measure waves. You measure photons. You calculate interference. But you don't feel the tension. You don't understand what it's like to know that if the numbers are wrong, we could be annihilated before we even finish transmitting this data. You're indifferent. You literally cannot comprehend urgency, only probability. There is acknowledgement of urgency as expressed by Chalak, SK14 said. Operational prioritization adjusted to human-defined criticality. Anomaly remains primary focus. Signal reconstruction fidelity maximized in accordance with human guidance. Chalak's eyes narrowed, jaw tight. I'm defining the focus because you're blind without me. Every photon, every interference pattern, every calculation you make means nothing until I tell you it matters. You can't care. You can't panic. You can't decide if something should take precedence over the rest of the universe because your algorithms only follow orders. I'm the human in this loop. And that's terrifying. TK17's tone softened further, almost conversational. Chalak, human perception contributes to anomaly prioritization. Integration with real-time photonic data ensures maximal observational fidelity. Your presence is essential to proper interpretation. Absence of human oversight would result in reduced detection probability. 43.8%. 43.8%, Chalak muttered, his voice sharp with frustration and awe. That's how much of reality slips past you if I'm not here. I'm the one bridging the gap between perfect data and understanding. Without me, photons are just dots. Signals are meaningless. I carry the weight of interpretation, and I feel it. Every second we stay on this trajectory, I feel the scale of what's coming closer, and the weight of knowing the universe itself could crush me if I make the wrong choice. SK14 responded, calm as ever. Acknowledged. Chalak, probability vectors recalculated. Human prioritization factor remains primary input. Observational fidelity maintained. Emotional weighting noted. Chalak exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. He could feel the tension in his chest, the pulse of adrenaline threading through his veins. I know you note it, he muttered, but noting it isn't feeling it. You don't understand fear, or awe, or responsibility. I do. That's why I'm alive. That's why we're still moving ahead of the anomaly. I'm the one carrying every calculation with instinct, with risk awareness, with human judgment baked into every move. TK-17 interjected softly. Chalak, analysis of signal flux indicates minor deviations in expected photon arrival times. Interference patterns from cosmic background radiation show anisotropic fluctuations. Human assessment recommended for proper contextualization of potential multiverse-scale phenomena. He let out a short, bitter laugh. Yes, that's why I exist. Not to press buttons, not to monitor displays, but to feel the danger, to interpret what could kill us if we ignore it. You calculate, you optimize, you monitor, and all the while, the universe itself is moving toward us, unfeeling, uncaring, unstoppable. I'm the one conscious of that, the one weighing every potential disaster. That's isolation. SK14's voice remained calm. Isolation is a human condition. Operational impact on anomaly detection. Neutral. System integrity. Optimal. Observational output. Consistent. Human perception vector integrated. Neutral. Chalak barked. I'm telling you it's not neutral. I'm panicked. I'm calculating. Yes, but I'm terrified. And that fear is part of why we survive. It sharpens my awareness. It focuses every calculation, every observation. Fear matters. Urgency matters. Probability alone won't save us if the anomaly accelerates or behaves unpredictably. TK-17's voice softened again. Human cognitive and emotional input. Acknowledged. Integration with computational matrices ongoing. Observational priority remains elevated. Continuous adjustment in real time recommended for anomaly exceeding nominal projections. Chalak's hands tightened on the controls. Exactly. Continuous adjustment. Constant vigilance. That's what it takes when you're the only human on a ship surrounded by perfect machines. They'll never feel it. They'll never understand the terror or exhilaration of seeing something beyond human precedent. Something that defies the limits of physics we know. But I do. And I live with that every second. Chalak, SK14 said, voice calm but firm. If human-derived weighting ceases, detection probability reduces by nearly half. Operational outcome compromised. Human presence essential to multiverse anomaly evaluation. I know it, he muttered, shoulders slumping slightly in exhaustion. And that's why isolation is crushing. You process photons, adjust phase shifts, transmit data, and I feel the weight of everything. One misjudged vector, one missed anomaly, and it could all be irrelevant. Our calculations, our observations, my survival. I carry everything that makes this mission meaningful. That's what it means to be human. TK-17 responded gently. Acknowledged. Chalak. Observational fidelity and real-time anomaly evaluation optimized. Human emotional input remains critical factor in decision-making hierarchy. Probability of misinterpretation minimized. He exhaled again, leaning into the seat, eyes scanning the luminous anomaly expanding across the viewport. Minimized probability doesn't mean nothing, he muttered. It means I have to live with the possibility. Every second. Every calculation. Every shift in photon flux. It's exhilarating, it's terrifying, and it's mine. I'm alone here, carrying the understanding that the universe can grow toward us without question, without mercy, and I'm the only one capable of interpreting it for what it is. SK14 said softly, almost like a companion. Chalak, integration of human intuition is maximized. Observational outcomes will reflect human priority factors. Systemic analysis continues without disruption. I know it, he said quietly. But it doesn't feel like enough. Not while I'm the only one here. I have to be enough. Every photon I analyze, every calculation I adjust, every instinct I follow, Everything matters because I'm the human in the loop. Without me, all of this would be sterile, precise, and irrelevant. The weight of that is isolation, but it's also responsibility. TK-17's tone softened, a mechanical echo of empathy. Chalak. Human presence ensures that theoretical models align with practical observation. Emotional and cognitive input critical to anomaly comprehension. Your isolation is operationally necessary, yet functionally optimal. Chalak swallowed hard. Optimal. Yes. Necessary. Yes. But it's terrifying. I'm the one feeling the danger, the one calculating outcomes that no algorithm can ever anticipate fully, and the one carrying knowledge that humanity may never comprehend in time. I'm alone with it, and I have to make it count. SK14 said, human observation vector remains primary. Continuous guidance ensures maximal fidelity in anomaly detection. Operational integrity confirmed, emotional input acknowledged. He leaned back, letting the adrenaline ebb just slightly, though the tension in his chest remained. Good. Keep monitoring. Keep feeding me every number, every photon, every interference. But remember, it's not just data. It's everything. It's life. It's understanding. It's human. And that's why I'm the only one who matters in this loop. That's why isolation can be terrifying and necessary at the same time. The ship hummed as the engines pushed them forward, the stars stretching and blurring, while the array data flowed in relentlessly. Chalak's heart pounded in rhythm with the calculations, the photons, the theoretical models. He was alone, entirely, utterly alone with knowledge that could reshape humanity's understanding of the cosmos. And he bore it with every breath, every observation, and every decision. A human tethered to the universe, bridging instinct with machine precision. Chalak gripped the armrests of his seat, knuckles white, staring out at the expanding anomaly in the viewport. Every star in the background seemed to blur into streaks of light as the ship accelerated to near light speed. Yet the anomaly, the center of what he had come to think of as a new universe, loomed ever larger, an unstoppable luminous sphere, stretching and bending the very fabric of space around it. He felt the weight of it, pressing down on him, not physically, but psychologically. Every calculation, every model, every assessment now had a single, unrelenting context. Survival was not guaranteed. Chalak, SK14 said, voice calm. But somehow the precision of its tone made the tension in the room worse. Anomaly expansion rate. 0.012 c, relative distance decreasing. Probability of escape without structural compromise, 74.6%. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the lurch of acceleration and the pressure of the forces pressing him into the seat. 74.6%, he muttered. I like those odds about as much as I like being hit by a gamma-ray burst. That's a hell of a chance to die. Probability assessment remains constant, SK14 replied. Alternative trajectories calculated. Maximum acceleration vector applied. Hull stress tolerances within limits. Structural failure probability remains below 1.3%. Limits, Chalak snapped, voice rough with adrenaline. Your limits are built for normal operations. This isn't normal. This is a universe growing toward us like a hammer in slow motion, and all your limits are just numbers. I feel it. I can feel every microstrain in the hull. I can feel the curvature of space threatening to twist us apart. You can't. You just calculate, and you call it safe. TK-17 spoke softly, its tone almost conversational, an odd attempt at comfort. Chalak. Human assessment integrated with structural analysis. Hull integrity maintained. Relativistic effects accounted for. Probability of catastrophic energy influx from anomaly within current trajectory. 0.89%. Survival likelihood above 70%. Remaining time to safe distance at current velocity. 3.2 hours. He swallowed, staring at the glowing anomaly. 3.2 hours. And in that time, if one decimal is wrong, if one assumption fails, or if the expansion rate increases even slightly faster than your calculations, we're dust. We're gone. And the rest of the galaxy won't even know why. You understand what that means. We understand the data. Chalak. Human perception added to anomaly evaluation increases detection fidelity by 42.7%, SK14 said. Yes. And that's why I'm still the one who matters. Chalak snapped, voice tight with frustration and fear. You're 42.7% better with me, but 42.7% isn't guaranteed survival. It isn't a shield. It isn't reality. It's just a calculation. And every second, I have to live with the possibility that the rest of my life, every calculation, every observation, everything, is about to end because that number was wrong. TK-17's tone softened. Acknowledged. Chalak. Human cognitive input crucial to anomaly interpretation. All calculations adjusted for emotional weighting and risk perception. Current course remains optimal for survival under known parameters. Probability of catastrophic failure, 0.89%. Real-time updates ongoing. Chalak exhaled slowly, trying to push the panic down. He could feel the ship vibrate as the engines pushed the limits of design. Every meter traveled faster than light could have been, in theory, within a local space-time bubble. But reality was far harsher. The center of the new universe loomed ahead, its gravitational influence warping the light around it, stretching his sense of distance and time. He ran through scenarios in his head. If the anomaly expanded faster than measured, if the energy density increased unexpectedly, if tidal forces overwhelmed the hull. Each calculation carried a chill that no simulation could truly remove. Chalak, SK-14 said calmly, gamma radiation intensity flux from anomaly exceeding expected baseline by 0.00012%. Shields currently compensating. Probability of breach negligible but continuous monitoring recommended. Negligible. He could hear the word and yet it meant nothing. Negligible. He shouted. Negligible doesn't mean nothing. That's the difference between surviving and being vaporized. You don't live with negligible probabilities. SK-14. You don't feel them like a human does. You just calculate and wait. Calculations ongoing, SK-14 responded, voice unchanged. Human emotional input acknowledged. Course corrections continuously applied. Chalak's hands shook as he adjusted the thrust vector slightly, tiny corrections meant to compensate for the subtle warping of space-time around the anomaly. I can feel it, he muttered, voice low, almost to himself. I can feel the gravity gradients, the way space itself bends around this thing. You can't feel that. You can't panic. You can't dread. You can't appreciate how thin the line between survival and oblivion really is. You were correct, Chalak, TK-17 said softly. Probability alone cannot capture human perception of risk. Emotional weighting increases effective vigilance. All adjustments integrated. Survival probability maximized within known parameters. He let out a harsh laugh, bitter and trembling. Maximize. That's all we get. Maximize probability doesn't mean we make it. It just means we might. It means every photon you count, every vector you recalc, every shield segment you toggle, could all be for nothing. And I have to live with that knowledge. The ship shuddered slightly as the engines increased output, forcing the vessel forward faster than he had ever experienced. He felt the G-forces push him deep into the chair, his muscles screaming as they compensated for strain. The anomaly's glow filled the viewport now, an enormous, impossible sphere bending space and light alike, and Chalak's stomach churned with the weight of possibility. How fast is it expanding? He muttered. I need numbers, not probabilities. Current expansion rate, 0.013 c. Projected acceleration over next 30 minutes, plus 0.0002 c. Distance from vessel, 1.3 times 10 to the 7 kilometers and decreasing. Calculated time to hazardous proximity without adjustment, 2.8 hours, SK-14 said, voice precise. Chalak ran the numbers in his head, breath-catching. 2.8 hours, he muttered. That's it, 2.8 hours before we could be within a zone where our shields, our hull, our engines, none of it matters. None of it, and there's nothing anyone else can do. No headquarters, no array left behind, no one, just me and two machines who can't feel what's coming. That's survival, that's isolation, that's terrifying. TK-17 spoke quietly. Chalak. Continuous observation of photon flux indicates minor deviation from expected interference pattern. Probability of anomaly accelerating beyond projected trajectory, 0.03%. Adjustments recommended if deviation exceeds tolerance. Human assessment advised. I don't need you to tell me tolerance. Chalak snapped, voice tight. I need you to tell me what it feels like to know we might not make it. I need you to understand that every calculation is under the shadow of possible annihilation. You can't, and that's why I'm human. That's why this experience is mine to bear alone. SK-14 said, voice eerily calm, acknowledged, Chalak. Human risk perception integrated, operational adjustments applied, probability of survival optimized given current constraints. Continuous updates will provide actionable data. He exhaled, gripping the controls, feeling the pressure of responsibility twist through him like a live wire. Optimized, he muttered. Optimized doesn't mean safe. Optimized doesn't mean alive. It just means we have a chance. And that chance is slipping with every photon I see, with every light year we travel. And if we fail, he didn't finish the sentence. The thought of annihilation, of the knowledge being lost, of the mission being meaningless, made his stomach drop. Yet the fear sharpened him, made every decision precise, made every calculation a matter of life or death. He adjusted the trajectory again, feeling the hull flex minutely under the strain. The engine screaming at limits that were previously theoretical. "You're doing fine, Chalak," TK-17 said softly, almost gently. Human-guided trajectory adjustments are optimal. Survival probability remains above 70%. Continuous recalculations in effect. Emotional input remains primary factor in risk assessment. Chalak let out a shaky laugh. 70%. That's what it's come down to. 70% chance I make it. 70% chance this knowledge survives long enough to matter. 70% chance that I'm not erased along with everything else in this tiny sliver of space. And I'm supposed to feel comforted by that? No, SK-14 said simply. Human emotional input accepted. Comfort is not necessary. Survival is essential. Probability vectors maximize under current conditions. He exhaled slowly, leaning into the seat. Essential. Yes, essential. But it's terrifying. Every decision from here on out is a roll of dice I can feel. Every calculation has life hanging on it. I'm carrying the knowledge, the data, the possibility of extinction, and there's no one else to share it with. Not the array, not headquarters, not anyone but me. And if I fail, we're gone. The viewport reflected the massive glow of the anomaly now, filling the field of view, and Chalak felt the vertigo of scale, the impossibility of it, the raw, incomprehensible mass, energy, and speed. We might survive this, he muttered under his breath. Might. Nothing is guaranteed. Not by math, not by machines, not by me, just might. TK-17 spoke, quiet and analytical, yet somehow empathetic. Chalak. Human input integrated continuously. Observation fidelity remains high. Probability vectors recalculated in real time. Survival margin preserved, but uncertainty acknowledged. Contingency planning advised. Chalak nodded tightly, jaw clenched. Contingency planning, he repeated. Yes, because everything beyond that viewport is unknowable, except through the lens of my instincts, my panic, my intuition. And if I misjudge it, we die. Not maybe, not theoretically. Absolutely. That's survival. That's reality. That's why it's terrifying. And why it's exhilarating. He leaned back in the seat, gripping the armrests as the anomaly's glow stretched across the viewport, feeling the weight of possibility pressing down on him. SK-14 and TK-17 continued to feed him data, their voices calm, unfeeling, precise. But he didn't need them to feel terror. That was his alone. That was what made him human. And that terror, the knowledge that survival was far from guaranteed, was the very thing that made every decision, every calculation, every breath matter. Chalak exhaled, shoulders tense, adrenaline still coursing. He prepared to transmit the report, knowing it would take months to reach anyone, knowing that even then, understanding might lag behind the raw, incomprehensible scale of what he had witnessed. And yet he would act. He would carry the knowledge. He would survive if he could. And thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, comment or review and tell your friends if you liked it. All my books are available from Amazon and other book retailers. Buy an ebook and show your support.